I am a die-hard Scooby-Doo fan. I have watched almost everything in this franchise because I absolutely love the mysteries and I love trying to figure out who the villains were. I wanted to take a look back at the first series of this entire huge franchise. I want to see how everything started. So yes, today's video is going to be about Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? This show ran from 1969 to 1970 and it has 2 seasons. Count them, 2, and we'll get into that in a little bit. This show follows 4 teens or adults, it's hard to say, and they're talking dogs, Scooby-Doo, while they travel across the country solving mysteries. They're known as Mystery Inc. and they have a mystery machine, which is just the most 70s van you've ever seen. Sometimes they're called by a friend or family member that has a bunch of weird stuff going on, or they're already on their way there and they just happen to stumble across these weird happenings and then they stick around to solve the mystery. That's pretty much the gist of the show. The first 2 seasons ran back to back, with season 1 ending in January of 1970 and then season 2 starting in September of that same year. There are 25 episodes. Pretty quick for a cartoon to just pump out content. Season 1 though, it does have 17 episodes while season 2 only has 8. So like I said before, we'll get into the seasons, but there is a 3rd season that the creators try to make a part of the original series and it's just not it. Because it was 8 years after the original show ended and it has a completely different vibe. I thought it was really weird, so I saw the 3rd season and figured, okay, I'll include it because as I was skimming through it, I noticed that there are villains that we've seen in a lot of other stuff going forward, so I really wanted to include it. The title sequence was completely different. There was this random dog. I don't know who he was, and a lot of the little clips from that title sequence wasn't in any of the episodes, so I was so confused. But I saw that this was part of an all-star season, and I figured I'll just include it. At the very last episode, when Prime suggested the next show I should watch, it was the Scooby-Doo show. And then I clicked on it and I realized this entire season is part of that show. They just chose specific episodes to include in the original season because they kind of wanted to rebrand it for some reason. I have no idea what their thought process was, but absolutely not. I will not be including the 3rd season. Just so you guys know, I do have it entirely scripted out in case I ever revisit it. At least we know that if I ever need to go back to that, I have most of it done. So while going through this show, I really wanted to focus on the details. There are a lot of background paintings that are beautiful to me. We're going to be playing a game called Guess What Moves, and it's going to be played every single time there's a very obvious, less detailed object in the frame that is going to be used. We will go through the clues and the suspects, and I'll even give you guys a chance to guess who the villain was based on what the episode showed us. And then I will be rating the villains, the mystery, and the overall episode, and then ranking them to see which episode is the best, for me at least. So this is pretty much the main opening sequence for every episode, and I just wanted to mention it because I love this opening song. It's a banger, and it was just one of the few that I let play out. Love it. So it opens with a man driving a pickup truck with a human-sized box in the back. There is a note that says it's being delivered to Jameson Hyde White, professor of archaeology in London, England. The box opens and then there is a knight that makes his way to the back window and it blinks his gross green eyes at the driver, which the driver, by the way, doesn't notice anything because he's on the clock and he doesn't give a fuck about anything else going on. We then fade to Scooby and Shaggy walking home from the movies and they are terrified. Like always, this is kind of their thing. They're the scaredy cats in this group, even though they're the ones who do most of the scary part of it. We'll get into it. But for this instance, they're scared because they're walking through this creepy ass forest. They're only walking through it this late because Scooby wanted to watch the movie 2 times. We hear Scooby talk, by the way. If you are one of the people that have never watched the show for whatever reason, Scooby-Doo can't talk. He just has this thing where he likes to say his words with the letter R in front of them. Yeah, he speaks English, which no one, literally nobody in the universe has ever been like, hey, what's going on, guys? Why do you have a talking dog? They hear a croak coming from a bush, and Shaggy makes his dog go investigate because he's that scared. Scooby starts barking at it, and then we see that it's just a little frog. But then Scooby starts chasing it away from Shaggy. While we're watching this little frog chase, we see a revolving background, which was a staple for old cartoons because they're not about to animate all these different backgrounds. They have to save money and they have to save time, so it was just the same thing. And that's actually something I noticed when I was a child. I remember being very just confused as to why I kept seeing the same exact tree in the background. I also wanted to mention the sound effects that they use because they are extremely cartoony, but I love them. And they also have a laugh track, which I do not love. I think we as a society should completely ban laugh tracks. They are so unnecessary and just annoying because we have to kind of pause for them to happen. I hate it. For the purpose of this show, I usually just completely ignore it. Anyway, back to the frog chase. It leads to the now deserted pickup truck, and when we pan to it, we can see that the knight is just in the driver's seat, and it seems like he was just driving the car. It's still holding on to the wheel, and then its head just falls off. Scooby and Shaggy don't give it a second thought and just get out of there. We do not give them enough credit for just getting out of these horrible situations that their friends are usually the ones that put them in. Speaking of their friends, we get to meet them next because Scooby and Shaggy call them to investigate the scene.
This sure is strange.
Yeah!
So they are Fred, Daphne, and Velma. I think once we establish it, I'll talk about the role they play in the gang. But for right now, it being the first episode, you can kind of tell they didn't really know where to go with them. So once they get there and investigate, they realize how strange it is for this random armor to not only be in the middle of this forest, but also be in the front seat. They do their investigation, which is seeing the name on the crate and also finding a piece of paper with delivery instructions on the floor right next to the car. They read, instructions. Date, June 10th, 1969. So this makes it known that this takes place in 1969, which is fun. It's been like 50 years and it's still going on. MFAC I armor tie. Save is Oniak is the E. Only because where are. Delivered to County Museum. Signed, J. Mull. I just know they were so mad once pausing TV shows became a thing because now we get to see all the gibberish they include. Also, Velma's mouth doesn't move while she's speaking here.
So that's where the old knight was headed for.
Also, they reuse a lot of the individual talking scenes. I'll show you as they pop up, but just know that 90% of their lines are animated with this. This is Fred's and then this is Daphne's. But you know what? It's okay. We forgive. They get the knight to the museum the next day, I think because it's light out now. We find out that the professor was the one driving the truck, Professor White, and now he is missing. The museum curator, Mr. Wickles, wishes they hadn't even brought it here because of the legend. There are a lot of legends in this universe. The legend is the Black Knight is supposed to come alive when the moon is full, and last night there was a full moon. We find out the professor was delivering this from England, and as the curator, Mr. Wickles, is talking, we can see that there are eyes blinking in the night, the same green eyes that we saw from the opening, but only Scooby notices this. Mr. Wickles tells two employees to put the knight in the medieval room, and Scooby starts to follow them, but then stops when he sees these glasses on one of the statues. The gang leaves, and in the van, Scooby pops up wearing the same glasses. The gang don't know what the heck these glasses are, so they go to the library to go find a book that can tell them what these glasses are. The absolute struggle of the pre-Google age. They found out these glasses are special magnifying glasses that are used by scientists, jewelers, and archaeologists. And hold on to your hula hoops. They're only made in England. Can you imagine only being able to get something in a specific country, having to call them up, whoever it is, mail a check, and then wait a year for it to be shipped? Disgusting. The gang decides something weird is going on in the museum, something shady. So they're going back on a secret mission. They're breaking and entering. Like most other museums, shit is locked up. Fred is a seasoned criminal, so he makes Shaggy climb a ladder to sneak in through this little ass window because, quote, he is the thinnest. So I absolutely love that they, 1, pulled this giant ladder from inside the van. 2, When Fred was pulling it out, it was just his giant arm and nothing else. 3, the number of tools that are in the mystery machine, which in other episodes we'll see is mostly empty. There's nothing back there. And 4, that they put this ladder on a jack. They also drew Shaggy arching his shift for no reason. And we find out that Shaggy is the best gymnast at school. So they're in school. Because it doesn't seem like it. Anyway, Shaggy does that shit. He pulls his ass up that wall and swings his 00 self through that window. He destroys every priceless artifact on his way down to open the door, and he actually bumps into the Black Knight, but it's empty. He passed by another statue. We can see that the eyes are moving inside of it, but not like the Black Knight who had those weird green glowing eyes. This looks more like a human is just inside of the statue. Shaggy lets the gang in and they split up. I think most of us who watch Scooby-Doo know what the usual split up is. It's Fred and Daphne, and then Velma, Shaggy, Scooby. Sometimes it is Fred, Daphne, Velma, and then Scooby and Shaggy, but aside from those, they don't really do any other type of split up. But in this first episode, it was actually Fred and Daphne, and then Velma and Shaggy, and then they had Scooby stand watch. They bribe him with a little Scooby snack, and Scooby says, perhaps 2, and he takes those snacks and he stands watch like the best guard dog you've ever seen, until a shadow scares him. He runs to Shaggy and Velma and then just stays with them. Fred and Daphne are in the Mummy Museum and they don't see this whole hand closing this tomb with them inside of it. What are you guys doing? Back to the other guys. Shaggy is quicks with the shits. He stops to close the blinds so that the night doesn't come to life because there's a full moon outside tonight. As they're walking, Shaggy just keeps walking and he walks into this random room, and not even 2 seconds later, Velma says that he's missing. He should be right there, but no, Shaggy's lost. They keep going and make it to the medieval room, and the Black Knight starts following them. Scooby notices and tries to tell Velma, but her stupid ass doesn't listen.
Not now, Scooby. Not now.
So Scooby is out of there. He bodies Velma and she loses her glasses. Another fun thing that is very synonymous to her character. Velma is so fucking blind that she can't see her glasses on this otherwise empty floor. And the Black Knight is also blind because he trips over her. She thinks it was Shaggy, and the Black Knight stumbles onto a pillory and gets locked up. He groans, so then Velma thinks this being Shaggy is sick and tries to feed him medicine. Shaggy eventually finds them, and then Velma, now seeing the real Shaggy, gives him the medicine. But once he realizes the Black Knight is there, he also books it. So it was just weird because she thought the Black Knight was Shaggy and then went to give this blurry person-sized figure medicine. But then when Shaggy pulled up, she gave it to him. So you saw another giant blurred figure and didn't realize there was more than one person. Yeah, Velma didn't really start off as a smart one. Also, while Shaggy is making her run away, she has her glasses on now, even though she lost them before. Scooby booked it to the dinosaur room, and we get to play Guess What Moves. Scooby destroys this dinosaur, but it reveals that the Black Knight was lurking behind the curtain. Scooby is a great civilian and he puts the dinosaur back together and then books it again. The rest of the gang gets filled in on the Black Knight being alive, and they decide they have to find some clues. They immediately find Scooby, and the first clue is a missing painting from the wall found by Shaggy. Of course, when he tries to tell everyone, he gets gaslit and the painting is back up on the wall. But now there is a trail of red paint that leads down the hallway. When they're walking, they walk by the same statue that had the eyes moving around, and we see that there's still someone inside of it. The paint trail ends with the mummy case that we saw someone closing before, and Fred opens it and it's a secret room. It seems to be of an artist though, because there are canvases, paints, brushes, and 2 easels, one with a finished painting and then one right next to it with an identical unfinished painting. And just by looking at this, Velma and Fred both say that this solves the mystery. They go to call the sheriff, but Daphne opens the wrong door and the Black Knight is behind it. It's wearing its little red feather before the fade to black, but after a commercial break, because we saw it commercial breaks, guys. It's missing it and it just looks bald, which I thought was funny. The knight punches a hole through one of the paintings on the easel. So if this was a real painting, they just destroyed it. But if it was a fake painting, they just wasted so much work. Shaggy tells Scooby to do something because this knight is coming after him. So Scooby puts on this little painter costume and pretends like he's going to start painting this Black Knight. Scooby just squirts some paint in his face and then just leaves. And the Black Knight now chases everyone and the whole gang goes to the relic room to hide. Shaggy uses his ventriloquism skills to make it seem like he's coming out of this pot that's outside of the room.
Help! Let me out of this pot!
We get to play another round of Guess What Moves. The knight's stupid ass falls for this, and Shaggy and Scooby are giggling. Scooby turns on the plane that they're hiding in by accident, and it just works. It starts to fully fly and flies straight into the knight. That guy is done. DNR him. We hear Shaggy say zoinks, and this is a little catchphrase. But now that the Black Knight is internally bleeding, we can unmask this and see who it really is. Scooby takes off the helmet, and it is revealed to be Mr. Wickles. And of course, Fred and Velma Bin knew this, but didn't we see a pair of eyes in the Black Knight while Mr. Wickles was talking to them? We cut to Mr. Wickles being arrested by the sheriff, and the two museum employees that helped move the Black Knight earlier are also getting arrested because Mr. Wickles is a snitch. And if he goes down, everyone goes down. The police have been looking for an art swindler. Mr. Wickles and his goons would switch their fake pieces of art for the real ones, which is why they had to get rid of the professor. He would have been able to spot all the fakes. Then they realize that they never found the professor, and then Scooby starts barking with a shoe in his mouth, and he takes them to that same statue that we keep seeing the eyes moving in. And then we open it up, and it's the poor professor gagged and tied up inside. They fill in the professor about what happened, and according to the professor, Mr. Wickles was able to hide inside the Black Knight at the train station where it got delivered, and then on the way to the museum kidnapped him to make sure he didn't ruin his plan. I just feel like there could have been an easier way, Mr. Wickles, like you could have had him in your basement, but I suppose this is more fun, and that's what this show is about. The episode ends with Scooby being a menace and torturing the gang with the Black Knight after they've all been traumatized. And we get his cute little Scooby-Doo that he does to the audience at the end of all of his little shows.
Scooby-Doo!
So this was a solid start to this series. I enjoy the formula, especially as a child. We get a cold open, the gang gets involved, there's a chase, the villain gets captured, we get an explanation for their motive and how they did it, all while usually meeting all the suspects and finding the clues with them so that we can kind of guess who it is along the way. Also love that there's a new villain every single episode. I realized that those were the type of shows that I like to watch because there was always a new character. I will give the villain a 7 out of 10. I didn't find him too scary because they didn't really play up his supernatural elements. It is an urban legend after all, but most of the time it kind of just looked like a guy in the costume, especially since we saw it empty already. He was willing to do what it took to get his money though, which I respect. And on top of that, he was able to create these duplicates for these paintings, so either him or his goons are extremely talented, and who knows how far he actually got. I mean, he did kidnap the professor after all. I think if he were able to get his hands on the gang, they would have been dealt the same fate. I will give the mystery an 8 out of 10 because I did enjoy it, but it being the first episode, I think they were trying to trick the audience a little too much. We only got 4 possible people that it could have been: the professor, the curator, and then the 2 employees. And as the curator was talking, we saw the eyes moving, so that just tricked us into thinking, okay, it can't be him because he's literally right there. And on top of that, Mr. Wickles is so tiny, like we don't get any explanation as to how he was fitting and fully functioning in this armor suit. And on top of that, picking up grown-ass people and dogs and just toss them like they're nothing, you know? It was just a little too much trickery afoot. I will give the episode an 8 out of 10 because it's the first episode, so I don't really want to be too hard on it. It did establish a lot of Scooby-Doo tropes that we're used to seeing, like Velma losing her glasses, them splitting up, Shaggy and Scooby being scared. We got Scooby snacks. The only main thing missing was the meddling kids line that the villain says, but the villain didn't say anything. And I noticed with this series, a lot of the villains don't really say much once they've been caught. Like a few say some here and there, but in later stuff, that's just like the thing that they say when they get caught, you know? This episode opens at Rocky Point Beach on a spooky night. We see green glowing footprints that are coming from the ocean and get washed away in a wave. And then we see the source of those footprints, and it's this glowing green diver covered in seaweed. It goes underwater again, and then right as it does, we see the gang pulling up for a beach party. I guess the party was just the 5 of them. Shaggy is roasting the weenies, Fred and Daphne are breaking it down. Scooby is surfing. He accidentally runs into the diver and dips. Scooby goes to warn everyone, and they actually do see the villain, but when they go back to investigate, it's already underwater. The next day, the gang is at a malt shop where they investigate news stories that could be connected to the diver that they saw. There are articles about a boat mysteriously vanishing, a beach hermit named Ebenezer Shark says the ghost of Captain Cutler stole it. So they go to the spooky ass, foggy ass beach to interrogate this hermit who has his own boat. He claims to have seen it with his own eyes. He knows that it's the ghost of Captain Cutler because it was a foggy night, just like the night that Captain Cutler's boat collided with the fancy yacht where he died. Before him and his ship sunk, he shouted that he would return, so Fred thinks that now by making all these boats disappear that he's getting his revenge. Scooby smells something and falls into the lower level where he stumbles onto a diver suit. And it's just so funny because they pan to Daphne for like a solid 2 seconds and she doesn't give a damn. Hey! Ebenezer tells him that it's just his old diving suit and then just tells them if they want to know more, they can just go talk to his wife at the old lighthouse. Because this is a recent thing that happened. It's not like a legend. He just happened to die. The gang split up. So now Daphne and Fred keep an eye on Mr. Shark. And then Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy are going to go to the lighthouse to interrogate the wife. Inside the lighthouse, it is creepy, it is spooky, and it is ominous. All things I love. There are cobwebs everywhere and it's musty. These are skulls. They think she's a witch, and honestly same. I love how they just don't bullshit. It's just that they choose to go investigate, so they're weird for that, but they know it's something sus going on. We get to play Guess What Moves. This jar is Ear of a Newt, and another one is Canned Hyena Laugh. Mrs. Cutler pulls up on them and touches Shaggy, and just the mere sight of this old person freaks him out. Velma starts talking to Mrs. Cutler and straight up tells her, "We want to talk to you about your deceased husband because we think we saw his ghost." This woman then says, "You sure did because of me and my witchcraft." The next part made me cackle because as this woman is telling them that she regrets having brought her husband back from the dead because he's taking his revenge, Scooby takes a spoonful of whatever was in her cauldron to have a taste. Scooby, please, some decorum. This shit is so fucking good until he realizes she's washing her dirty ass clothes in it. The water was brown. They leave and Mrs. Cutler sends them off with a witchy laugh. Outside they see a pile of glow-in-the-dark seaweed gliding across the beach. It goes into a drain pipe that's in these rocks, and Shaggy is not about to go with that little ass pipe, even though we saw his 00 ass gymnastics his way into a window that was much smaller. So they tell Scooby that he is the only one small enough to go through it. Scooby puts on a XXL shirt stuffed with pillows to make himself look big.
Too fat.
And I thought it was so cute. He refuses to do this dumb spooky shit, and I respect him. Velma coerces his dog with 2 brain cells into doing it for 1 Scooby snack. Scooby, you have to bargain better. What is this? Scooby goes in and starts dragging out a piece of glow-in-the-dark seaweed that a mouse is holding onto for some reason. The mouse curses his ass out. And this is a clue. The gang all meet up and then Velma pulls out her book that has every single answer she'll ever need to find out what the glow-in-the-dark seaweed is. Apparently it is phosphorome pyriform, aka a phosphorus glowing seaweed only found in the graveyard of ships, which is where Captain Cutler went down. Fred and Daphne let the others know about the hermit, and Fred says, "I don't know, but he was headed for the marina about an hour ago." Fred, your one job was to keep an eye on him. What have you been doing for the past hour? They rent a boat to go out to the graveyard of ships. They're all in their diving suits, even Scooby, and this graveyard is fucking spooky. There are destroyed ships all over the place. There's a note in a bottle that says no deposit, no return. They see a boat from the marina, but no one's on it. Velma surprisingly believes that this ghost power is running it, which I found interesting because she is always trying to find logic when it comes to supernatural things, but you can tell she is scared. This boat goes into a cove with no way out, and they follow it, but wait. The boat is just gone once they get inside. They turn back to go to the graveyard of ships, and they go into the water. Scooby and Shaggy quickly sink to the bottom after some hijinks, and then the rest of the gang join. They decide to split up even underwater, but this time Velma joins Fred and Daphne. And then they look into a boat and they see a person fully decomposed. It's a skeleton just sitting at a table. They think it's Captain Cutler, but then realize it can't be him because of how old the diving suit is. This person has been dead for over 100 years, which is so sad because that means no one came for them. As they're looking at this corpse, the ghost closes the door and just books it. Fred does something that cartoons love to do, which is put both feet on the door while they're pulling it. It's never gonna open, and this has bothered me since like 1999, I'm not even joking. Since Shaggy and Scooby were doing their own thing, they get to see this goofball running past them. And Scooby does what I thought was gonna be the wildest thing to do to exit a situation quickly. But no, it was only to hit the diver and stop him. He gets flung into another ship that has a bunch of scuba tanks, some that are glowing, and that is a clue. The diver starts chasing them and they try to light a match underwater. This isn't SpongeBob, so they just go and hide. After they run again, they find the rest of the gang, and Scooby is excited to tell them about the clue he found. Velma wants to take a closer look at this ghost, and after finding glowing footprints, they decide to follow them. The footprints lead them to a cliff where the yacht from the marina vanished. Shaggy sits on the rock that opens the cliff to a secret passage, and they reach an underground cavern with a bunch of yachts. All of these yachts are being painted a different color, and the yacht they saw earlier that disappeared in the cove is there too, with a mini sub attached to it. With this, the mystery is ready to be wrapped up, but they have to trap the ghost. So last episode, we didn't really get a trap. They kind of just got lucky with Shaggy and Scooby almost killing this man. They set up their little contraption, which is putting a bar of soap into a spray container that's attached to a fire hose to suds up the ghost. After he slips off the ramp and into the net, he will be caught and hoisted up. They lure the ghost with a bunch of noise, and he actually appears, but unfortunately, Shaggy is not strong enough to hold the fire hose. It gets Scooby instead. He lands in the lifeboat and drives straight into the ghost. So they did catch him, but their plan failed, which is also something else they like to do. They go to unmask the ghost, and it is... Who the fuck is that? They were certain it was Ebenezer Shark, and the silence when it's just this random man was hilarious. None of them have a clue, except for Shaggy. He was terrified when they were at that lighthouse, and he noticed every creepy thing in it, including a painting of Captain Cutler. So he put some seaweed on this random person, make it look like a beard, and then they all realized that it was
Captain Cutler!
Captain Cutler. So mystery is solved, even though only Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby saw Captain Cutler, but yes, everyone knows it's Captain Cutler now. At the malt shop, they see an article that says, "Teenage sleuths solve boat hijacking mystery. Captain Cutler and his wife taken into custody by sheriff." They talk about the motive and how they did it, and they made up a story about him and stole the yachts from the marina. And because his diver's suit got covered in seaweed, that's why he was glowing. This episode ends with Scooby drinking everyone's milkshake. I'll rate the villain a 7 out of 10 because I like how spooky he looked while committing his crimes, but it wasn't even intentional. I think the overall atmosphere was creepier than the actual villain. We had a place called Graveyard of Ships where I'm sure countless have died. We saw an actual human skeleton, but the villain was just there. He didn't really get to do anything but run around, and it wasn't even a legend, it was just the ghost of himself. The wife was somehow creepier, but not even. Her house was the most creepy thing. She was just a little weirdo in it. At least she was nice. Also, the villain didn't say anything once he was caught, just like last episode. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10 because it was kind of ruined with the seaweed discovery. Like I said, the villain wasn't too menacing, and it being someone that we thought was dead was cheating a little bit, but now at least we know that any person they mention is a suspect. Speaking of suspects, that creepy guy, Ebenezer, they just never talked about him again. Usually they kind of say, oh, we thought it was you. And he's like, what? I was just hanging out. What are you guys talking about? But they didn't do any of that. They just kind of forgot about him an hour ago in the marina. But I did like that Scooby found the clue. It was adorable. I'll give the episode a 6 out of 10. They didn't have the villain arrested like they usually do, where they talk about how they came to their conclusions. The ending was like kind of random, just in the malt shop again. But because I did enjoy the episodes, apart from like the fluff and the shenanigans, I won't rate it any lower. Starting from this episode, there is no more fun title card like the other 2 episodes. It is now that generic running sequence that we saw. I am so sad they stopped doing it. I thought it was so much fun. I love title cards. Adventure Time has one of the best title cards ever. So if it means the time spent making those pretty title cards are now being put into the episode, fine. I can understand that. The episode opens up on a rundown castle on a small island. In one of the tower windows, there is a ghost looking through a telescope, which is hilarious because it's holding it with its little ghostly sleeves. It spots a boat in the distance, and that's where the gang are on. Daphne says that Freddy sure did pick a spooky day to go boating. And honestly, isn't like every single day spooky in this universe? They are literally always in the creepiest parts of wherever they live. Velma explains what fog is.
Some unnavigable nubulation.
We're lost in this fog. Shaggy is making himself a double triple decker sardine and marshmallow fudge sandwich, and I would like to interject, because of this man, I used to also want to eat these ridiculous sandwiches, and I would make like layered sandwiches, and that's how I got chunky as a kid. They hit the shore pretty rough because they can't see past the fog, and now they're on Haunted Isle, which I doubt was their intended destination. They say the old Vasquez castle is in here, so they are familiar with this land. They decide to go and ask for help. On the way, Scooby finds a piece of paper that is moving, and it turns out to have a crab under it. Why do they keep doing my homegirl like this? The gang take a look, and it's a torn piece of map that says, "Danger, leave Haunted Isle." They realize that someone wants them off the island, so they decide to stay and investigate why. Go to class. As they're walking through this spooky ass island, the ghost is lurking. They get to the castle, and it's fucking spooky. Look at that shit. Cobwebs, spooky sheets, old weaponry. There's a painting of Vasquez, the pirate who sailed the seas in 1612. They take a look around, and this damn see-through ghost is right behind them. Velma says that she saw on TikTok that these old castles have a lot of trapdoors in them. Almost immediately after scoffing at this, Daphne falls through one.
Oh, Velma, don't be silly. That only happens in movies.
The ghost starts cackling. And so the gang dip. We play Guess What Moves. You're getting a little harder, huh? Daphne falls through an opening into the inner sanctum. This is where Daphne became the damsel in distress, a label that in later shows and movies she tries desperately to get rid of. As she's deciding where to go, a ghost hand almost grabs her. Now this ghost has green hands and is fully transparent. Like, I can see right through it, even though when it was holding the telescope, it was using its little sleeves. Scooby and Shaggy get lost, and a glowing skeleton tells them which way they went. A ham and cheese sandwich appears out of nowhere, literally just floats into frame. We play Guess What Moves. And this is what freaks him out. Daphne hears someone coming, so she hides behind the doorway with a weapon to fully crack whoever is coming skull open. Too bad it's Shaggy, and she gives him brain damage. Now the gang is all here. They can't even finish cracking a few more jokes before the ghost shows up and starts cackling in their faces. It tells them to leave Haunted Isle and never come back. They chase this ghost who cannot stop cackling, and when they try to catch it, they go right through it. They're terrified. Velma is like, guys, there's a logical explanation for this. This place is haunted. So if Velma's scared, we should all be scared. But Freddy says that we have to stay there for 3 reasons. 1, no ghost is punking him or his gang. 2, why does he want us to leave so bad? And 3, they're literally stranded. There's nowhere for them to go. Daphne finds a clue, and it's this giant key that says, second passage of the old bell. Daphne got to do a lot this episode. I thought she was gonna get kidnapped and then have to get rescued, but she just found her own way out. She does think this key belongs to the Phantom, which is such a conclusion to draw. They know there are no bells in this castle, so Velma says passage has to mean a book passage, and Old Bell has to be the name of the book. Scooby's like, yeah. And Daphne's like, there are books in libraries.
The best place to find a book is in the library.
What great contributions, guys. This whole time there's been a painting behind them, and it pans in and we see that the eyes are moving. Somebody's eavesdropping. In the library, they find a book and see the word catacombs in the second passage underlined in red. They go to the catacomb and use that giant key to unlock it. They make Scooby go in and take a look around, and he's like, actually I was shot and I can't go in unless I get 3 Scooby snacks. He finds a magician's hat with a rabbit inside and a wand, but that's pretty much it. So he just gives everyone the okay to come in. Inside, the room is full of broken magician things, like their little tricks that they use.
Look at all that crazy magic stuff. A song and toolbox. Disappearing cabinets. Levitating tables. Gosh.
Velma is starting to put things together, but they hear footsteps, so they have to hide. The Phantom finds them and tells them, since you didn't get off the island, you have to die. The Phantom chases the gang. Shaggy gets stuck in the saw in half trick and starts getting sawed by a floating saw. He is screaming as the saw is cutting him in half, but then when we get closer, we see that it was just a dummy head, and the bottom half is just Shaggy and it runs away. Where did the Phantom get all those things? Will we ever find out? Probably not. We see Fred, Daphne, and Scooby, which is a group we don't normally see, but I will defend myself in saying that they did not agree to split up. They kind of got split up, so it's different. So they just find a magic carpet that works. Look at Daphne. And they get on it and they completely forget Scooby, even as he's screaming at them to wait for him. And then almost immediately they crash, which is what they deserve. So now the gang has to figure out how to catch this Phantom that they've seen go through walls. How will they do it? With a suit of armor, a crossbow, cannonball, and spring. Fred uses all of this to make some sort of trap that I have no idea what it's supposed to do. Shaggy says what I said.
We can't catch a phantom?
But Fred and Velma already know they can somehow catch this Phantom, and they decide to use Scooby as bait. He is not with it this time, but there's no more Scooby snacks, so he kind of has to, and they dress him up as a man to make sure the Phantom chases him, even though he was already chasing him regardless of his species. Scooby finds it behind a painting of himself, but he doesn't run. He is fully ready to square up. He mocks it and baits it into running after him. The Phantom chases him a lot. Scooby fucks up the plan though when he trips over the rope and falls into it. The magic carpet brings him to the knight that bonks him on the head and releases a bucket that gets stuck to his butt and hangs him from the chandelier. The Phantom appears, but then Scooby, he falls on top of the Phantom, revealing that it's just a person in a bedsheet. Who could it be? Because we have no suspects except maybe Vasquez, who sailed the season 1612, which I know they threw in there so that we wouldn't think it's even him, but that's the only other person outside of the gang that we heard of. Anyway, the police show up because the fog lifted and they were able to see their boat crashed onto shore, and they wanted to see what the heck was going on. But instead they stumbled upon this person tied up wearing a bedsheet.
Who is that?
And we get to unmask it, and it is...
Bluestone the Great.
Bluestone the Great, an ex-magician that is wanted in 6 states. He was here because he heard of the legend of Vasquez's treasure and wanted to find it, so he used all his magic tricks to scare everyone away. The gang says they figured out that the floating tricks were nothing more than just wires.
Look! No hands!
See? Wires!
But the wires we see are thick, and there are clearly no wires on Shaggy when they're trying to demonstrate. And Velma's the one controlling it, so when these things were just moving around while he was chasing everybody, who was controlling it? But sure. We find out that he walked through walls using mirrors and projectors. As he made it towards the wall, he would back away so his reflection would slowly disappear and make it look like he was walking through walls. This just seemed like a lot of work to keep doing because he did it multiple times. So does he have a bunch of these, or is he just constantly resetting up the mirrors because they have to face in a specific direction though? Look at her. I'm not even including all of them, but it's so tragic. Why did they do her like this? Afterwards, the gang wonders about the treasure, whether it was real or not, and then Scooby just starts to dig as if he found something, but all he did was disturb a little animal. And the episode ends. I will give the villain an 8 out of 10. The Phantom was good because you don't know how he went through the walls, and he did seem menacing because he seemed to be supernatural. The way he was captured was also really funny because you see this ghost that looks scary, and then you just see him flatten and his human extremities are just poking out. I will give the mystery a 6 out of 10 because they cheated and we had no idea who the villain was. I know they couldn't include this random magician because it would have been so obvious that it was him with all the magician stuff going on, but maybe we could have seen the man at least and then maybe suspected that he was secretly a magician, but then we would have had to meet a bunch of other people, so I do get it. It's just ugh. The actual mystery was, how the heck is this ghost doing all of this? Is this actually a ghost? They really believe that it was a ghost, so I think if they weren't stranded, they would have just left. They wouldn't have bothered dealing with this because they were all scared. Also, it was kind of a shame that we never got to see the treasure. Usually they help find it, but then who would it have gone to, you see? But if there was maybe a person that actually lived there, we could have suspected them too. I don't know, give me something. I'll give the episode a 7 out of 10. I noticed that they make the monsters look real in the beginning, and then when we get up close towards the end, it's so obviously fake. So in the beginning we see this ghost that looks so real, looks transparent, it looks like it's actually a ghost, but then at the end we see the face cover very clearly detached from the rest of the body that just looks like a mask, but it never looked like that before. It was a good watch though, and I loved the setting. This episode opens up in Gold City. There is a vulture and lightning, and the city looks run down. We see a boarded up entrance to the Gold City mine, and we see a man just strolling on by. I don't think he looks menacing at all, but I think he's supposed to be. The gang is driving, and of course it is storming, and they're lost. If it were me, I would too get lost because I never learned how to read a map, and I thought we were lucky when we had MapQuest. Thank God for just our phone maps. So this is all Shaggy's fault because he's been reading the map upside down. Literally, who gave him this job with Velma right there? But at least they're in Gold City. There is a Gold City ranch with a vacancy, and they decide to spend the night here. They want to make them seem like adults but also teenagers. At this point, I'm gonna assume they're maybe 19. Even though that is an adult, they just keep referring to them as teenagers, and they have so much liberty. They're renting boats, equipment, and now motel rooms. The owner, Big Ben, opens the door and he says no one else is here. Scooby fucks with his mouse and gets cursed out. He gets cursed out by a lot of creatures. He calls old Hank the caretaker, and poor Hank is a little old guy. He looks like he needs to retire. He splits them up, boys and girls. Again, weird if they're adults, but less weird if they're teenagers, even though they're here by themselves. I don't know, guys. They are very impressed with these dusty rooms, and Hank tells them they're empty because of the miner, and they gave my girl Velma some lips. The miner 49er has his own little fun legend. He came to Gold City in 1849, and he can't rest until he finds the last vein of gold. At night, you can hear the mine moaning for the miner. This mine is freaky. He's been scaring the guests away, and Hank says that he is out of there in the morning. The guy we saw in the beginning, that was the miner, and it's just crazy how in later things like shows or movies, how much different he looks. The new miner is so much scarier than this. Scooby is hanging out and he sees an eyeball peeking through the keyhole.
Something must have scared off the guests.
At the same time, Fred says that they're going to be taking a look around. As they're walking, we see the miner lurking in an old house. The gang goes to the spooky ass saloon. They order at the saloon, and the miner serves them a glass of spider webs. I guess he just leaves right after this because no one says anything. They don't even question who served them. They decide to investigate an old hotel that is also spooky but very nasty, and all I kept thinking about were the bed bugs. Shaggy and Scooby get scared with a tree branch, poltergeist style.
He's got me!
And the hotel is also a dub. But they do realize that they haven't checked the mine yet. As they're leaving, Scooby sees a miner in a mirror. He tries to run, but he gets stuck on a cigar store Indian. Inside of it, they find a map to Gold City, and it's a brand new map. Someone was hiding it because there's a code that reads L10, R7, L4, R23. Velma thinks this is a combo for a safe, so they decide to try it on the hotel safe. At the safe, it's open, so there was no need for the code, and it leads to an elevator. Now, Scooby is not going down this unless he gets a Scooby snack. I love how his level of wanting to do stuff changes day by day. Like one day, he'll say, I will guard you with my life for one Scooby snack, and other days he's like, I'm not going in that elevator unless I get the whole box. The elevator leads down to the mines, and the miner is down there following them. Ew. Shaggy lights up some dynamite thinking they're candles, but they're fine. They reach a point in the mine where it's lit up, and they decide to split up to figure out where the moaning is coming from. It's Daphne, Fred, and Velma in one group, and then Scooby and Shaggy in the other. We're very used to this. Scooby decides to fuck with Shaggy because he's scared, even though Scooby is scared all the time. They get to this place with 4 doors and decide to look through them. Scooby immediately finds the miner behind one of the doors. Shaggy's like, are you dead ass? He goes to check himself, but then the miner isn't there anymore, and they do this 3 times until the miner finally appears and they run. Velma, Fred, and Daphne are in a storeroom with a bunch of flour and a weak-ass floor. Fred falls right through it and gets covered in flour. Shaggy and Scooby are running from the miner and find Fred covered in flour and think that he's a ghost. So they run again into a cart, but the miner is in the cart that's attached to theirs. A fun little chase ensues on the track, and it just keeps going in random directions. And at one point, the miner is in the car with only Scooby. You know that thing that cartoons love to do. Scooby and Shaggy get flung off the car and barrel roll down the hill and crash land at the bottom. Daphne also just falls down the mine shaft, and this is where Fred gives her nickname,
Danger-prone Daphne fell into a mine shaft.
Danger Prone Daphne. Scooby goes to get her but grabs the miner instead, and he just drops his ass. But then we see Daphne immediately next to them. She says that she saw the miner down there and a bunch of mazes, so I guess that's how she got out. They hear another moan, but now we find a clue. There's a wire that leads to a speaker, and things start coming together for Fred and Velma. They find a tape recorder at the end of the wire. We see that it's playing all of the moans we keep hearing. Shaggy finds crude oil and thinks that it's chocolate syrup, so Fred decides to use this microphone for one of his little schemes. Shaggy imitates a train coming while the miner is on the tracks, and he sees a light coming towards him, so he gets very spooked. He starts running straight to a tool shed where Fred locks him in. Poor Scooby can't stop the cart, so he just crashes straight into the tool shed, and we see the miner hanging on for dear life. But we also see Scooby hanging onto his boots that are slowly coming off. And once they come off, it reveals that the miner was wearing stilts. Scooby falls, but he's fine. No need to worry about him falling a few stories. They unmask the miner, and it is Hank.
Oh, dag-nabbit.
Turns out Hank was scaring away the guests so that he can buy the ranch, the ghost town, and the mine for dirt cheap. And there is no gold, but there is oil. Bro, this is a good scheme. I'd be pissed. Oh my god, Hank, you could have let these kids rock for one night. They would have chilled and they wouldn't have found shit. I feel you, Hank. Dag-nabbit, indeed. And the worst part is the owner, Big Ben, was like, we could have just been partners, Hank. Why'd you have to do this? Hank, you fumbled. I'll give the villain a 4 out of 10 because he was not scary. Like I said, we do see this guy later within the franchise, and he's so much scarier. This just looks like a regular guy walking around. I'll give the mystery a 7 out of 10. We did meet the villain, so he was on our suspect list, but we only had 2 suspects, so it was 50-50. Him wearing stilts to throw us off because we wouldn't have thought it was a short self it's just so funny. I think that's the funniest part of this episode. The flower was random and was only used to scare Shaggy and Scooby. The only clue that was really helpful was the tape recorder so that we can see it's a person playing these moans and not a ghost. Overall, I'll give the episode a 5 out of 10 because there was a little bit too much nothingness for my liking. We explored the city to no avail, and I never felt threatened by this guy. This episode opens up super happy. Scooby is walking through the park having a grand old time in the daylight. So there's no spooky trees, no darkness, no fog. There's a cute poodle that Scooby sees and he tries to mack.
Hello.
She walks straight past him and into some bushes, and her owner starts screaming for help. We hear this little dog yelping. She's been dog napped by the Green Goblin. Scooby is pissed, so he runs all the way to the rest of the gang who are at the beach, and it seems like it took him all day because now it's nighttime, so that means he was at the park alone. He turned on the radio for a news report. I know, I'm so glad I did not live during these times. The reporter says that there's been another dog napping, and this is the 3rd prize dog that's been kidnapped in the past 3 days. The owner of the first dog is offering $500, which according to Google today would have been $4,156. I don't know if I personally would take money. I know what it's like to lose a pet, and I would have paid anything in that vulnerable state. So I think I would feel a little too bad taking the money from someone who's distressed that their pet is missing. I did find both pets though. I lost my dog and my parrot. My dog just escaped one day, got taken to the dog pound. We found him a few days later. My parrot just flew away, but thankfully we talk, so I just screamed out his name and he would respond to me, and then we found him in one of my neighbor's trees, so all good. The gang goes to Buckmaster's, the first owner. He lets him know that instead of paying the ransom, he decided to use that money towards the investigation. But he's tight because this means that the Great Dane is gonna win and he's out. Scooby though is super happy that one of his peeps are going to win. That owner's name is Bob, and he's been grooming the dog all year. They're all scared that the Great Dane is going to be next, but Bugs tells them that the owner only takes him out at night and it's always near the police station. He says that every dog owner needs to be vigilant. Fred tells them the rest of the plan inside the mystery machine, and we get a first look inside the mystery machine. Even though in the first episode we kind of got a peek and there was a lot of tools, this time they're fully inside and we get to see what the heck is going on back there. They have all this high-tech gear and I was shook. How do they afford all of this? So Fred's plan is to plant a decoy with a tracker. Poor Scooby doesn't want to be kidnapped. They try to bribe him with some Scooby snacks, and Shaggy instead snatches them up because he knows that he's going to be the one that has to walk the decoy. They get Scooby all ready to look like a show dog that's ready to be kidnapped, and off Scooby and Shaggy go. Scooby wants some mac with this poodle who gave him hard eyes. The voice actor seems to be the little duck from Tom and Jerry, which I thought was so cute. She can't handle rejection, so she throws trash on poor Scooby. As they're walking, some truck releases its fumes everywhere, and in the smoke we see someone snip off Scooby's leash from Shaggy's hand, and they take Scooby. Poor guy is in the back of the van and Shaggy fucking books it. He takes this guy's motor scooter and goes after his little buddy. This is while Fred, Daphne, and Velma try to locate Scooby using the tracker. As Shaggy's chasing the van, Geronimo pulls up and starts chasing Shaggy. Shaggy just crashes into a bush, poor guy. We get to the dog napper's hideout, and there we see a bunch of dogs in crates and 2 men who are part of the scheme. One guy is wearing a regular outfit, and he seems to be the lackey who does all the dog napping. The other is wearing some Native American mask made from a buffalo and tribal clothing. The lackey, Mike, says he's got Miller's Great Dane, and out pops Scooby from the crate. The mask guy tells Mike that he's an idiot because this mutt is obviously not the show dog they needed.
How could you mistake this mutt for a show dog?
Rude. He says to take Scooby down to the mountain on the old hand car to get rid of him. The gang finds Shaggy and he tells them that a weirdo Indian was chasing him.
And when this weirdo Indian...
They can't find any tracks, but they do find an authentic Indian relic that is 1,000 years old. A clue? They see that Scooby's tracker is moving towards Indian Gap, so they plan an interception. We see that Mike puts Scooby in a crate and just pushes it so it can just keep going, and the mask guy says it should be about 20 miles until anyone finds him. Scooby, using his nail, carves out a circle to poke his little head out, and the gang sees him. Ooh, Shaggy is a real one. He jumps out of the van onto the handcar, but there is a train coming straight towards them. The gang are able to switch the tracks to save Scooby and Shaggy. The gang uses the handcar to go back to wherever Scooby was, but someone starts shooting arrows at them, and they see the ghost of Geronimo again. Scooby tries to wave a white flag. Afterwards, they do see that the arrows were factory made, and then they see a village on the mountainside. Shaggy does not want to go there because he doesn't want to get scalped, but of course Fred comes up with a plan to get them inside the building. The plan is to shoot a giant arrow into the building that's tied to a rope, and then using the rope, everyone will climb up. The mask guy appears though, and he starts shaking some macarenas and...
Leave this place, pale-faced intruders.
Using this accent, he tells the pale faces to leave now or suffer the fate of the Spanish conquistadores. But Velma notices that he speaks really good English for someone who's supposed to be 1,000 years old. They go inside to investigate, and Shaggy and Velma get attacked by bats, and they play this over and over again. Even though there's dialogue coming from them, it's really just them moving like this the whole time.
Get out of here, bat!
My glasses! I can't see without them!
After Shaggy escapes and leaves Velma's blind ass behind, he runs into a room with Scooby wearing this whole getup. And it's so funny because Scooby is just standing there in it and Shaggy doesn't notice it. But then Scooby says, "Rye Raggy," and Shaggy says, "Rye Ruby."
Right, Ruby.
Then once he realizes what he's wearing, he thinks it's the ghost of Geronimo again and freaks out. Scooby's just standing there with Velma's glasses. They go to give it back to her and she's standing there talking to the statue, fully thinking that it's Shaggy and Scooby.
Oh, why, Shaggy? You're petrified with fear. And you too, Scooby.
Is she the dumbest person alive? Fred and Daphne are in the ceremonial building. They see a fire and it immediately becomes huge and the witch doctor appears behind it. This guy is the witch doctor, so I don't have to keep calling him the masked guy. He's tight and he tells them that if they don't leave now, they never will. And he disappears into the fire again. So he might too be a magician. Daphne does not want to go check this shit out, but Fred does, so she just takes a seat and stays behind. We play Guess What Moves. Daphne is missing again. Back with Scooby and Shaggy. Scooby smells food and leads Shaggy to it. I guess they just forgot about Velma. They find a room full of food, but they realize that this isn't Indian food, it's dog food. We get another Guess What Moves. Real quick. So they realize that this is the dog napper's hideout. They just help themselves. And while Scooby is sniffing around for food, this wall opens up and a hand comes out and pushes Scooby into this cabinet. There are just so many fun traps in this episode. Scooby falls down this slide where he finds all the dogs and Daphne tied up. Back with Fred, he keeps looking for a secret passage and he finds it, and there is Velma. And then Daphne finds them. So now everyone's together except for Shaggy. Shaggy's off somewhere being extremely greedy. The dogs tell Scooby where to find the dog nappers, and after the whole gang find each other, they start following the dogs that are leading them to the dog nappers. They find the witch doctor and start chasing him and chase him up a pole, and Scooby gets to unmask him, and it is...
The owner of Big Red.
Buck Masters. He says, "You blasted kids, mind your damn business."
You blasted kids! Why didn't you mind your own business?
At the station, we go over what the motive was. So Buck kidnapped the dogs that could beat Big Red, and then he was gonna find Big Red right before the show so that he could win. And the Ghost of Geronimo that we saw was just a movie projector that was in his truck. And the episode ends. So I will give this villain a 2 out of 10. He wasn't scary. The whole Native American thing was super random and was just there so that we can have a masked villain, but there was no correlation between his scheme and that. We don't even know where he got the tool from. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10 because I liked the motive and the crime. It felt more personal since they were kidnapping dogs. They just really didn't find any clues. It was only really just the arrows and the accent, which was ruined already because we saw him talking to Mike earlier and it was clearly just one of the dog nappers that found this somehow. I'll give the episode a 7 out of 10 because it wasn't the best. The mystery was kind of meh, but I did enjoy seeing everyone come together and do everything in their power to save Scooby. Especially Shaggy, he chased and kept up with the car. He outmaneuvered a train, outran a hologram, and then jumped out of a moving vehicle, all to save his bestie. I love the title for this episode. I think it's funny. The episode opens up with a spooky mansion and there is this regular man walking outside like a zombie. We hear a moan coming from somewhere. Moaning, come. The gang are driving through this spooky ass road and I love the contrast between their bright ass colors and this spooky world they're always in. They are on their way to the Weatherby estate. Sharon invited them for the weekend. No clue who Sharon is, but hopefully we find out. They actually look forward to doing a lot of fun things this weekend, so let's see if any of them actually happen. They see the man from the opening walking towards them from the old mansion and they do something that I commend them for doing, which is saying, not my problem, and they just make their way to the estate. Very proud of them for that. We do not stop in the middle of the road for random men. At the estate, Sharon and her husband tell them that they've been hearing a bunch of strange noises recently, and Sharon's Uncle Stuart vanished. Now see, this is where I get confused because they're her friend, but yet she's married and they're in high school. Anyway, they think that the man that they saw wandering before is her uncle, so off to the road we go again to try to find him. At the Kingston mansion, we see Uncle Stuart in the shadows and he is decrepit. These are not the same two people. He is old. Stuart tells him what happened. He heard a ghostly voice coming from the mansion and he had to obey it. And this reminded me of the movie The White Zombie, where there was a witch doctor who would turn people into zombies, except the zombies weren't trying to eat flesh, they were just his slaves. I actually watched it on my channel if you want to go take a look. That movie it was something. He says in the mansion he saw the ghost of Elias Kingston. He is a ghoul of sorts with black hair and blue skin, wearing a gigantic coat. He looks spooky. Unfortunately, he sounds like a munchkin from The Wizard of Oz.
The Weatherby fortune belongs to me.
He says the Weatherby fortune belongs to him, and if they don't give it to him, the whole family will suffer the same fate as Uncle Stuart. And after doing this motion, is aging horribly. Sharon's husband says, first of all, I'm calling the police, but the phone is dead. Velma tells him, okay, just go get him. Can you imagine having to drive down to the police station and getting some help? Fred says they gotta stand guard, and of course Scooby is first up. And Velma says no ghostly voice will get past his hearing, and he grabs this to pretend he couldn't hear what she just said. Scooby does this without a Scooby snack, but he falls asleep during his shift. I feel him. Out of an open door to the balcony, we hear a ghostly voice moaning come to Uncle Stuart, and Uncle Stuart obeys and goes right past Scooby. We get to play Guess What Moves. Scooby alerts everyone and they realize Sharon is gone too. The gang goes up to the old mansion and we get another one of my favorites, which is the revolving backgrounds. After they pass the bookcase, we see it open and inside is Sharon tied up. We see the ghost of Elias also appear and start stalking the gang. He is lurking. Shaggy, who is on roller skates for some reason, stops to look inside this pot, and the ghost uses this thing to blow Shaggy away on his skates, and he crashes into a running shower. A lot of this episode is in the title sequence, so you can tell they love this episode and they knew they did something, which they did. Scooby finds a kitchen, and in the fridge he finds a plate with a single bone in it. There's another dog, a bulldog, who is pissed that Scooby touched his shit. He starts chasing Scooby and we see a blue hand telling him where to go. Scooby puts the bucket over the dog again and not being able to see anything, it crashes straight into Shaggy into the running shower again. Regardless, this is their first clue because why would a ghost need a watchdog? As they're talking, they find a skeleton wearing the same clothes as Stuart did the last time they saw him. The ghost made sure to age him even more and he is gone. If only they had more clues though. Never mind, because the ghost is putting his nasty blue hand on Shaggy's shoulder. The ghost says that if he doesn't get his fortune, everyone in the Weatherby house is growing old. Get the fuck out of here. You know the gang doesn't give a damn, especially Scooby, who's having this candlelit dinner by himself. The ghost goes into the mausoleum and for some reason walks like a zombie. I'm assuming he knows he's being watched, but if he does this just for funsies, then good for him. They go to the door and Fred tells Shaggy to use Velma's fingerprinting kit to see if there are fingerprints on the door. Shaggy uses it on Velma.
Like, wow, look at all them fingerprints.
Again, why are we letting Shaggy do anything? Is it because Velma thinks poles are two different people? They do see some fingerprints on the doorknob and they realize it can't be a ghost because a ghost wouldn't have fingerprints. They tell Scooby to go inside and take a look and Scooby makes this face. They bribe him with the Scooby snack, but he ups it up to 4. But too bad for him because Shaggy takes it and he goes into the mausoleum himself. He steps 1 foot in and then it's just like, yep, everything's good, come on in. They see a book on crystallomancy and Shaggy goes, oh shit, Crystal Macy, I know her. It's a book about how to use a crystal ball. As Fred says that he thinks there's a connection between this and a fortune teller in town, the ghost closes them into the mausoleum. Shaggy does the foot on the door thing again, and Fred automatically thinks that there's a secret exit, but like, what if there wasn't? But of course they find one. They don't even show them leaving. The next shot is just them in the van, and they talk about how the passage they found was just a secret exit into the Weatherby estate. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's a clue. They're at this Swami's place, which is a fortune teller. Daphne's stupid ass opens up the storage closet and everything falls out, including a costume that falls onto Scooby. And just then, this lady comes in to see the Swami. So Scooby, wearing the getup, just pretends to be the Swami. This lady has glasses and fully believes this dog is a person, even with Shaggy's voice coming from behind the curtains. Look at his face, like Scooby's just fucking with her at this point.
I see a tall, handsome man in your future.
She's had enough of this shit and just wants her palm read. So Scooby paints her hand red. She Karens her ass out of there, and I'm crying that they even did this. Why not just say the Swami's not in? Why ruin the small business? Right after she leaves, the table with the crystal ball that they were sitting in starts to levitate. And the ghost head is inside the crystal ball. He says, you did not listen, you must pay. I'm sorry, they literally left. You followed them into town to this Swami's place. They did exactly what you asked. Even though it wasn't their plan, they still did. So the crystal ball table thing starts chasing the gang. When Scooby accidentally lands on top of it, he crashes it and the crystal ball falls off. Scooby got fucked up. They see that the table itself was fan propellered. Someone just popped the fan motor in and was able to control it. They find some suitcases.
Suitcases. Maybe somebody just moved in.
And we get to play Guess What Moves. They also find a mini TV camera that displays onto the crystal ball. Closed circuit TV. More clues. And enough clues to turn the tables on the ghost. Scooby and Shaggy stroll on through, calling for the ghost, holding a giant treasure chest. Before we know it, the ghost, yet again, touches Shaggy.
Ew.
And he's like, oh good, how fortunate for you. He's a fucking clown. He makes him stay until he opens it just to make sure there's not some shady shit going on, but of course there is. Out pops a clown and squirts water on him. So Shaggy and Scooby dip. They go behind the curtain and put Shaggy's shoes out to make it seem like he's standing right there. But in reality, it's a giant anvil. The ghost just snuffs it and breaks his hand. The rest of the gang set up their closed circuit TV trick and make it look like Shaggy's just running around. The ghost falls for it and starts chasing him. They start fucking with him and then use a projected image of himself. And he's like, oh shit, this place really is haunted. Guy, this is your trick. How do you fall for it? Then they project an enlarged image of Scooby to make it look like he's Clifford, and He's out of there. He runs straight to the passage where Sharon was in, but Sharon is with the gang and they didn't even show them finding her. I hate that. The ghost is just like us though and thinks Sharon is still tied up there, but when he turns around, all he sees is the skeleton of Uncle Stuart. He runs out of the room and just listen to the sound effect of him running. The gang drop a net on him and catch him. At the reveal, we have Sharon and her husband with the gang, and the ghost is tied up. They have a rag and some makeup remover spray to unmask the villain. Can you guess who it is? Well, Fred says there's no need for introductions because it is Uncle Stuart. Them taking off the makeup and him just wearing glasses and having a full beard underneath is killing me. All of you who have ever tried to cover up your eyebrows know the struggle of that. Uncle Stuart wanted to scare them out of their fortune, so he used makeup to make himself look old. And here we hear Daphne's voice coming out of Velma's mouth.
And by a clever use of makeup, he made himself look old.
But unfortunately for Uncle Stuart, he had a terrible wig that blew off in the wind and Sharon peeped. So he had to take her prisoner. Sharon asks, then where does the Swami come in? And Daphne says, what better way for a swindler to disappear? What? Apparently, that was his alias. So he had a business as a fortune teller, and that was going to be his identity once he stole the treasure. The episode ends with Sharon's husband offering them food, but Scooby does this.
The whole turkey? Gone?
He ate the entire turkey.
Scooby-Doo!
I'll give the villain an 8 out of 10 because he didn't give a damn. He popped up, put his hands on them. He did little fun tricks, and he had a good motive. It's just that damn cheap-ass wig. He also wasn't smart. I mean, he fell for the same exact tricks he used on the people. Why would you fall for that? He also just kind of stuck around sometimes without doing anything scary, so I think the idea of him is more scary than he actually was, but I just enjoyed him, so I have to give him an 8 out of 10. I'll give the mystery an 8 out of 10 as well because it was fun and the clues were actually meant for something to the story. It loses me a little with the Swami thing. I don't see why they needed to do that besides having a reason to make the ghost do the crystal ball thing. They also kept jumping back from scene to scene without really showing them how they got there, and I will give the overall episode a 7 out of 10. It was good, it just loses me with the Sharon plotline and the Swami plotline. Like, when was Sharon found? Also, why not tell us what her husband's name is? Why not tell us how we got places? I know it doesn't matter, but sometimes details are what makes the story more fun. And it wasn't a bad episode, I just think the villains were smarter in other episodes. This episode begins in a movie studio, so not a creepy opening, the gang is right there. Daphne's Uncle John gave them all jobs as extras for his new picture, The Ape Man of Forbidden Mountain. Apparently no local wanted to work on this film because they were superstitious of the old legend about a real ape man who allegedly burned down an old mansion. Mind you, the whole time they're talking, there's this ape just standing behind him. They've even had 3 reports of an ape man sighting at night. Scooby and Shaggy immediately try to leave, but Mr. Maxwell assures them that the only ape man is their stuntman Carl. They start filming a scene with the star Candy Mint. She needs to run across this bridge and runs into the ape man, who was supposed to be Carl, but it's looking like it's the real ape man because it starts fucking with the bridge way more than was rehearsed. Scooby saves Miss Mint by barking at the ape man, and she's able to run away, but the bridge snaps with Scooby on it. He continuously gets slingshot back up to the cliff where the ape man is on, and he just smacks the shit out of him over and over again, eventually getting rescued by Fred, and then the ape man falls off. The gang have to find Carl, the missing stuntman. They check his trailer, and in the trunk they hear someone knocking. They open it up, and it turns out to be Carl. He says he got pushed in by the ape man. Him and Candy both quit until the ape man is caught. So the gang decides to stay and solve the mystery. Well, everyone except for Scooby. And it makes me sad because he is terrified. He's willing to put all that aside to go and save Candy. They're on a set and we see the ape man lurking and eavesdropping. According to the legend, the ape man lives in a secret cave somewhere in the rock. The set is also built on the ruins of the old mansion. Shaggy says Zooks, even though the subtitles say Zoinks.
Zooks! There should be some good clue hunting around here.
The way Shaggy is so down to solve this mystery is different because he usually doesn't give a fuck unless it puts Scooby in harm's way. candy. I think it's just for candy though. They look around the ruins and Scooby immediately finds half a hamburger. Is this a clue? They think it's weird that an ape would be eating a hamburger because apes don't eat meat. Fred offers it to Shaggy, which I thought was hilarious because why would you think he would eat that? It's on the floor. He has standards. Low, but they're there. Fred tells him to keep looking but to be careful because this was built for a scary movie and there could be trap doors and things hidden all over the place. They don't even say how they're splitting up, they just kind of do it, which is a regular one. Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby, and then Fred and Daphne. Inside a big room with the Scooby team, we see a parrot, and he's telling them to stick it up, and what's the password?
The great ape is first rate.
And y'all know I love my parrots, but fuck whoever put it in this little ass cage. That shit sucks. Right behind them is this ape on a skateboard, and it grabs poor Shaggy. They fall down the stairs, and it turns out it was just a stuffed ape.
Can't we talk this over, man to ape man?
The whole gang meet and start checking out this old library. Fred finds a copy of the film shooting script. While Daphne's looking for clues, Fred tells the gang that while filming, a lot of people mysteriously vanished from the room that they're in. Daphne accidentally presses a button and Fred is just snatched up into the bookcase. Scooby is looking for a secret entrance and the ape sees this, so he gets a Scooby mask and pretends that he's Scooby's reflection. And it's so obviously an ape. The gang realize Fred is missing and Scooby is bugging out about the mirror. Something phony. When he goes to show them, the ape is over the joke and so it just starts coming after them. They get to a locked door and Shaggy does that thing where he puts his foot on the door that he's trying to get out of. They tell Scooby to be a dog and stop him, so Scooby starts barking at it and the ape starts growling back. Velma thinks that Scooby said something in dog that the ape understood.
Whatever you said, Scooby, it's working.
Velma, what are you talking about? Scooby is once again with the shits and barks the ape up the stairs. Shaggy tells Daphne to turn the lights, but honestly, this has like 9 buttons and poor girl hits the wrong button and it turns the stairs into a slide. So Scooby just slides down the stairs and the ape is once again gone. After it's gone, they start messing with all the buttons and Velma is like, to be honest, the roof might cave in, but go ahead. She's over it. The next button she presses moves the stairs up and Fred is like,
Hi, gang.
so he has a trap in mind. In the basement is where the last scene was going to be shot and it was the ape man being caught. So they're going to capture this ape man, the real ape man, using the SNET on the pulley system. So this is the plan. Sometimes they explain it, sometimes they want it to be a surprise. They're going to lead the ape man into the room, blind it with some light, and then pull the switch with the net to capture it. And of course, Shaggy and Scooby are the bait. They bribe him with not only a stack of Scooby snacks, but also a bonus once they capture the ape man. Shaggy is off the dog treats today, but thankfully Daphne has a Shaggy snack, which is a pot pie with pizza crust, anchovies, pepperoni, cherries, and a thick chocolate sauce. They both say yes, so the plan is on. While Shaggy and Scooby are looking for the ape, they hear a noise coming from the room, and we play Guess What Moves? Shaggy thinks that it's a trophy and starts playing a game of pool with this dog. Scooby notices that the ape is gone and right behind Shaggy, so they start running and it starts chasing them. Velma, who can't see anything after she got dog breath on her glasses, pulls the wrong lever.
I can't see. I hope this is it.
So right now it's pitch black. Then she pulls another one and the net falls, but it falls on Shaggy.
You got him.
The ape couldn't have gone back upstairs, so it's still in the basement, and Scooby finds a clue. There's a tuft of hair on this wine cask. So perhaps the ape ran by here and it's not really a wine cask. They open it up and it's a door to a secret passage that leads to the mountains. And of course they go right into it. Can you guys imagine them in the barbarian house? They find the exit that's by the dressing trailer, so they split up to search the trailers. Shaggy and Scooby and then Fred, Velma, Daphne. With Shaggy and Scooby, of course, they just fuck around. They see a bunch of costumes and start playing Halloween.
We could play Halloween.
Scooby puts on the ape mask and he is so cute.
How's this?
Shaggy sees the ape man without his mask on, so he snaps a pic. The ape man starts chasing them and Shaggy is so excited to show the rest of the gang this picture.
Hey, gang, I got the ape man on film.
They run to the house and using the stair trick again, the ape falls down and crashes into literally everything. Shaggy shows him a picture and it is...
Carl, the stuntman.
Carl. Carl, Shaggy solved another mystery. I think that's number 2. Carl decided to sabotage the movie because he didn't get the lead. Look at Daphne. And then the episode ends with Scooby and Shaggy fucking around with masks and saying that they should be in movies.
We ought to be in the movies.
I'm so glad that came true. I'll give the villain a 7 out of 10 because he pretended to be a victim. He just wasn't really scary, and it's so weird that he was terrified of Scooby. He was also fucking with them a lot, and I don't think he needed to, especially because if he just stopped after he supposedly left, he would have never been caught on candid camera. The reason it's not lower is because he did this solely to get revenge for not getting the lead. That is hilarious. I'll give the mystery a 7 out of 10 because it was fun that they threw us off with Carl, but then the gang struggled finding clues as to who it was. So we have fun clues as to how he was able to hide, but not who it was. They literally just got lucky because of Shaggy and Scooby fucking around, which is pretty much how they solve most of their mysteries. The thing I'm iffy about is that we saw that it wasn't a real ape man because he took his costume off and Shaggy and Scooby just happened to see it. There was no unmasking to be done, but is that really a bad thing? Because I guess it is fun to change it up here and there. I mean, it shouldn't always be the same exact thing. I'll give the overall episode an 8 out of 10 because it did feel a little bit more planned out than others and it was super fun. The episode starts outside of a beachfront amusement park, and Scooby is sniffing this clam while the rest of the gang are digging them up from the shore. I guess they're making clams for this picnic. Shaggy wishes Funland, the amusement park, was open, and out of nowhere it starts turning on. Velma says it's too soon for it to be open, but the roller coaster is even on. So of course they decide to go and investigate. It cuts to this thing who makes this noise. And I remember this episode very vividly from when I was little. This and another episode that I will talk about once we get to it. And it was because of the sound. The gang are inside and this entire amusement park is open and running.
It's hard to believe. Everything's running, but nobody's here.
Man, it's a dream come true.
Scooby and Shaggy go to order food as a joke because there's no one there, but then their order gets slid over to them, so they finally acknowledge that this shouldn't happen.
Who did that?
Fred plays a carnival game and wins it and wants to reset it for someone so they don't just leave their mess around, which is cute, but before they even got to try, it was already reset. Someone cleaned it up, and Fred's prize is waiting. They didn't even see who it was. Even when Fred goes to pay for the game, the cash register rings him up.
The cash register rang up 25 cents.
So now they think that this place is for sure haunted. With Scooby and Shaggy, they're just hanging out by the cotton candy and they see this thing just quickly pass by. Shaggy says he's faster than a speeding bullet. It just keeps going, so they decide to follow him, but Scooby can't pick up a scent. This can only mean that he's a ghost. But when they see him go into the Hall of Mirrors, they say that he has to be a man from Mars and not a ghost. While Scooby and Shaggy are fucking around, they run into it and just start running away from it. Fred, Velma, and Daphne are looking for them and also see it. He goes onto the Ferris wheel and Fred wants to have a chat. So he proceeds to try to get this man down from the Ferris wheel because they think that he's stuck. They start cranking the wheel, but they've already gone around completely and he's not there anymore. But if he climbed down, they would have seen him. And then the lights start going off all over the park. The whole gang meet up and talk about what they saw, and it was strictly a weirdo from outer space. They see a house and go to warn them about everything they've been seeing. This is the Jenkins house. Him and his sister both listen to Fred telling them that their park is being run by itself. They tell him that's impossible because they would have seen it. I also fully thought that Mr. Jenkins was Starchy from Adventure Time, but he's actually literally everything else from the last century. And we also have the same birthday. So cute, love you. They keep insisting that there is a weirdo in their park and they keep denying it. So the gang just leave because they don't want to be gaslit anymore. They decide to stake out the park just to see if they can see it again. And after about an hour, the lights turn on and this shit is bonkers. The merry-go-round is going backwards, the cotton candy machine is overflowing, the hot dog maker is making hot dogs at the speed of light, and the weirdo is juggling. The gang chase after it to a carnival game and it starts throwing prizes. It runs to the tunnel of love and this guy is just swimming towards their boat.
There's something in that tunnel. It's him.
They all fall in the water and then they realize this is not a regular man. Scooby and Shaggy are not trying to look for this man. They just want to play games since they can't leave. Scooby is strong as shit and he hits the bell. But then the weirdo takes his turn and just completely breaks the game. He starts chasing Scooby and Shaggy, and look at those backgrounds.
Eating on us! Head for the roller coaster!
On the roller coaster, this guy just climbs out of the cart and starts climbing up the carts to reach them. At this point, I'm leaving. If something wants to get me that bad, it's gonna get me if I keep staying here. The rest of the gang see them being harassed and help them hop onto another roller coaster that's headed the opposite way. They try to wait for him to appear in the roller coaster, but he got off and is now at the top of one of the drops, and it dives straight off into a tent. By the time they get to the tent, he's gone. They come up with a plan to catch him. They're gonna make this little electric car go faster, but Shaggy accidentally turns on the motor and Velma can't control it. Her and Scooby zoom on out of there, and Miss I don't know what contacts or spare glasses are loses her glasses, and now Scooby's life is in danger. She doesn't seem to mind that they're about to run straight into this man.
Oh, I see the traffic cop, silly. Right turn, isn't it?
How can you even see that but then think this pole is Shaggy and Scooby? There's a train coming and Velma says, oh well, the train's gonna have to look after itself. I can't stop. You're gonna kill Scooby. They barely miss it, but it hits the weirdo. They're able to stall after they run into the cotton candy machine. They start planning to trap this guy in a giant crate, and of course Scooby has to be the one to lure it into the trap. They say after he lures them in, they'll pull him up with a basket. Scooby says fuck that, not even a Scooby snack can convince him. So Velma says alright, I'll go with you and we'll take the car. Scooby says fuck that and just goes. Scooby finds the weirdo pretty quick and gets chased into a wax museum. He disguises himself as a caveman next to the stuffed wolf, but the weirdo thinks that the wolf is Scooby and starts fucking it up. He shakes it so bad that the head just comes off. He sees this and just dips. He hides as a pirate walking the plank, and the weirdo chases him out of the museum straight into the trap. Scooby is taken out with the basket, so did this trap finally work? Well, we saw it dive off of roller coasters, so no. He goes through 2 crates and a brick wall. That's when they realize that it's not human, and Fred makes this face. Mr. Jenkins appears and says, yep, he's not. He's a robot. His name is Charlie, and he's been programmed to operate everything in Funland. The plan was to make a bunch of robots to run Funland completely, but he got out of control and started destroying everything. Mr. Jenkins is like, yeah, but y'all can help me catch him, right? Guy, why didn't you just tell him in the first place? So they go on a car with a giant magnet to find Charlie. The magnet pulls Charlie out of a shack, but then we see a hand cuts a wire on the magnet and Charlie is able to get away. Charlie crashes anyway because the electromagnet fucked up his circuits. Scooby starts sniffing around and points to someone hiding behind a fence. Sarah? She admits that she was the one who messed with Charlie so that he can lose control because she didn't want robots running Funland. Mr. Jenkins is like, you got it, I'll just rebuild and rename him. So Charlie's been repaired to be much nicer, and the episode ends with him petting Scooby.
Royal, 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 royal. Ruby, ruby, roo!
I'll give the villain a 5 out of 10. He wasn't really a villain, he was just a robot, but he gets points for fully trying to off Scooby. The Jenkins aren't really villains, but the way they gaslit the fuck out of the gang was wild. And then them not even being on the same page about it is just like, why? It was a twist that she cut that shit because that was really the only reveal that we got aside from this thing being a robot. I feel like we could tell that it was a robot from the start, but let me know if you were able to tell. I'm trying to like make these reveals fun, but it kind of just gave it away. But yeah, it was a twist that Sarah cut the magnet, but also why fuck with the magnet that was gonna capture him? Like, why not just let it capture Charlie so that we can fix him? Why let him keep destroying Funland when you don't even want him there to begin with? Ew, I totally skipped the mystery rating, so I'll give the mystery a 3 out of 10 because it was pretty obvious by the sounds, the way he walked, him surviving every and any hit that it was a robot, and there were also no actual clues aside from him just surviving as to what actually was going on. There were clues about him not being a regular guy, just a robot, but is that really the mystery of this episode? Like, that's it. I feel like it was a little weak. Overall, I'll give the episode a 7 out of 10, and I know that it is higher than usual, but even though this episode lacked what other episodes had, which is unmasking a villain and nefarious little plots, it had something important to me, and that is atmosphere. The setting of this episode is so much fun. I love seeing all the details they included in it. They don't give a damn about the actual characters, like making sure their mouths move when they talk, making sure their eyes are open or just consistent with one another. The backgrounds are always on point, and it's just nice seeing them explore different settings, so I have to give it points for that. This episode starts with Scooby and Shaggy going home with a pizza. They're terrified because it's dark and spooky, but they forget about all that and eat the pizza on the street. Scooby just eats the whole thing. And I really love how they keep amping up how much they love to eat, just a little more every single time. Shaggy hears a car coming and thinks it's the Mystery Machine, but it's this creepy figure driving with a violin case hanging out the back, opened window. They hit a rock and that shit goes flying out the window because obviously Scooby and Shaggy try to get their attention, and Scooby is just so fucking funny to me. Shaggy goes to get the case because they couldn't get the driver's attention, and he opens it and it is filled with stacks of cash. Thousands of dollars, says Shaggy, which is like $3 billion today. Shaggy uses a payphone to let the gang know, and Scooby guards the money. The driver slowly starts pulling up to Scooby. They use a little dog that looks like the dog from the dog napping episode as bait. She has a little hurt paw, so Scooby runs, leaving the case behind to go and help her. The guy easily gets it and takes the dog and leaves. Shaggy is able to guess exactly what happened when Scooby mimes it out, and I just think it's so cute how close these two are. The gang look around where the girl dog was to find some clues. Daphne finds a puppet controller with the label Pietro's Puppets, so Scooby thinks that the girl dog was a puppet. So these are our clues so far: a violin case, a puppet dog, and packs of brand new bills. This shit don't make no sense unless they're counterfeiters. And to be honest, I would not have guessed that watching this for the first time. The gang has to get into Strand Theater, so they decide to use their talking dog to get an audition. At the theater, they see this little old guy playing with his puppet, but he says that only puppets can be in the show. The puppet guy tells him that he's only this good because of the great Pietro. As he's talking, Scooby is sniffing around and one of the puppets moves. This freaks Scooby out and he knocks into Shaggy, but they peep a little crisp bill peeking out of the drawer. They sneak out of there as quick as possible, but they are looking sus to the old guy. They fully drive away, and Velma's like, guys, you couldn't find any clues, and Shaggy's like, no, we do, it's this random dollar. Velma says that it's real, so it's either planted there to throw them off, or they just robbed this old guy. They decide to go back and actually look for clues. Why even drive away? Why animate them driving away? Just animate them sitting in the car and talking. Back at the theater, they just go inside because it's unlocked and the puppet guy is sleeping. You know who's not asleep though is the damn puppet. Shaggy opens this fake door, and as it opens, a puppet looking figure in a Phantom of the Opera / Zorro getup rises up. They split up regular teams, with Shaggy, the same puppet, knocks over the door. So these puppets are alive and well. The big cape guy is trying to kill them. He's pushing over set pieces and cutting those ropes for the sandbags that be in theaters. And if just one landed on them, it would have been over for us. Shaggy and Scooby are in the dressing room, and out of the door we see it. We see him. He is scary, but they stay fucking around, and Shaggy puts on the guy's exact wardrobe. He calls it the Cloaked Cavalier.
The Cloaked Cavalier!
But the actual one is just standing across the room menacingly, and Scooby is not with it. Scooby plays charades, and Shaggy believes him, thankfully. He said, there were two of you, and Shaggy says, let's go. With the rest of the gang, they're on the stage, and the Cloaked Cavalier cackles. And Velma sees him just as Scooby and Shaggy run to them. Fred says we gotta go into the prompter box where Velma saw him and see what's down there. Scooby is not with that, but Daphne just tricks him by throwing a box of Scooby snacks into it so he can chase after them. Daphne, that's mean. Scooby is your friend. Scooby just sees that there's mad violin cases down there, but they're all empty. Then the organ starts playing. It's the Cavalier. Then a Viking comes down and then back up. Same with the pirate. And then Scooby sees the girl dog and fucking hates her. So he chases her down and mauls her. It was a puppet. And there's an engraving plate for a fake dollar bill. If you're hiding your moneymaker in this puppet, let's maybe not release it to the kids who are looking for shit. Time to tell that doorman. Daphne is shaking this guy, trying to wake him up, but then they realize something crazy about him. He's a puppet.
He's a puppet too!
That's all for me, fans.
I've seen this movie before. Shaggy is good and tries to leave, but we're locked in. A bird puppet steals the plate from Velma, and Fred is pissed because this was the only clue they had. So back to the violin case room we go. We get to play Guess What Moves. And guess what? It opens into a secret room. There's a printing press and a bunch of new dollar bills. The Cape Cavalier starts cackling and chasing them, and we see this fun revolving background. They get chased into this room and the door closes behind them and the screw falls off, so we're stuck in here. The Cape guy says, "Now you know my secret." There's a ladder at the end of the tunnel and they just say fuck it and start climbing. It leads to the stage, but before they can open the trap door, we see the Cavalier step on it to shut it, and he says that they can never leave, which would have been menacing, except the gang decide that he can't be that heavy if all of them push, and by then he already took his foot off and is gone, so it was for nothing. The Viking and pirate come down again, but Velma says they're just puppets, and Scooby sees who's controlling them. So Scooby snaps off a sandbag to get pulled up to exactly where that is. He starts running and Scooby chases him to the edge. The rest of the gang release the rope that he was holding onto and trap him in a giant drum and tuba. Next is the reveal, and it turned out to be Mr. Pietro. The cop thanks them for catching Pietro because there have been a lot of fake 20s running rampage in this town. They tell them it was all Scooby, and it was. His little antics not only figured it out all for them, but also caught the villain. I'll give the villain an 8 out of 10 because he was menacing. He wanted these kids gone, taken care of. And he did creepy things, like all the life-size puppets that he moved around constantly, making us think that they're just real things. It was scary, but then you realize it's just a puppet, so then it's like, okay. I wish he was a little more menacing, especially with the secret tunnel, because imagine they were just stuck down there. I think they should have let it happen a little bit longer, that way we felt like, damn, we're really stuck down here. I'll give the mystery an 8 out of 10 too, because they had to follow a trail of clues, and the whole thing being a front for counterfeiting was a good motive. It was also scary how in the beginning they really looked like real creatures or humans, especially them finding that the guy they spoke to, they had a full conversation with, was a puppet. And also finding all these little secret rooms was a lot of fun too. Overall, I'll give the episode an 8 out of 10. I thought it was so much fun, but once you realize they're puppets, it kind of loses all the scariness. But up until that point, it was fucking freaky. This episode starts off with a clown staring at a circus from afar. Ew. Like, look at him. Ew. Two people pass by in one of those circus bikes, and then the bike splits in half and they can't stop. They crash into each other despite going in the same direction. The mystery gang are two driving down that road and see it and go to help. One of the drivers is a little person, and Fred asks, "Where's the little man?" I think for the 1970s, that's pretty aggressive. Scooby goes to save him when he falls out of a tree. The guy's name is Max this word, which I don't know if I can say. There's a lot of words that some people are okay with, some people are not okay with, so let's just avoid all that and avoid the words, right? The other one is Samson the Strongman. Max says that this was no accident. Someone broke it in half, so this happened. They don't give a damn who did it because they're leaving the circus anyway because it is jinxed. They tell the kids to also get the fuck up out of there. Unfortunately, this only makes them want to go see what's going on, so we go to the circus. But ew, the clown is still lurking. At the circus, the gang talks to the ringleader, Mr. Barnstorm. Max and Samson leaving means that they can't open. He tells them that the circus is being haunted by a ghost clown. Apparently, this is a superstition amongst the circus folk, and An American Horror Story Freak Show, it too was a ghost clown. He tells them that so many strange things have been happening, and as he's talking, Scooby sees the clown's shadow and goes to sniff him out. Mr. Barnstone tells them that they should just leave. So they do. They're in their van, and Shaggy realizes that they forgot Scooby. How dare you? Back at the circus, Scooby is being hypnotized by this clown with a gold coin. It does look like it worked because there are these little sparkles. The gang come back to get Scooby, and while they're looking for him, they see him doing the trapeze act, just like the clown told him to do, and he's there giving him instructions. Ew. Velma and Shaggy go to save him by putting a trampoline on the floor. Velma goes up the ladder to try to save Scooby, but before she can get there, the clown unhypnotizes him so that he realizes he's on the trapeze and freaks out and just falls, and then probably dies. But Shaggy and Velma pull through and save him, and he falls onto these balloons and then floats up with the balloons, and this psycho clown starts shooting darts at the balloons to make him fall again and also die. But once again, Velma and Shaggy pull through. Back with Fred and Daphne, they see the clown walking, so they follow him into a trailer. The clown pushes Fred into a closet and hypnotizes Daphne just like he did with Scooby. Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby find Daphne riding a unicycle.
She can't even ride a bicycle!
In this little costume. So does that mean that the clown undressed her? Because ew. This is what I mean, like ew. This clown is just ew to me. She is riding the fuck out of this unicycle. She's riding on elephants, and Scooby can speak elephant, so he tells the elephant to spray water on her face. This works, and she wakes up and they go to tell Fred. And now that he's safe, we have to figure out how to trap this clown. The plan is to get the ghost to run into this cage, then run out through the little door, close it so that the ghost clown is stuck inside of it. Of course though, Scooby is the bait. Scooby is not doing any of that for a damn Scooby snack. So they bribe him with a super duper hero sandwich. Shaggy wants in on the sandwich though, so they decide to both do it and just split it. While they're looking for the ghost clown, we see him walking around, and so they split up. But the clown catches Shaggy and hypnotizes him. The clown makes him do the lion tamer's act. Scooby hears him whipping it and finds him literally in a lion cage trying to tame the lion. The lion is pissed, and his name is also Simba, which I thought was so cute. The ghost clown says that once it blows its whistle, Shaggy will no longer be a lion tamer, he will be a lion snack. So Scooby sneaks up on him and steals the whistle and tries to get Shaggy out of the cage. But he can't get him to wake up, so he just blows the whistle.
Rick, Raggy, wake up!
And Shaggy realizes what he's doing and just books it.
Here, Raggy!
I love him for that. They lure him into a cage, which he just floats into. So it was obviously a balloon. After they realize it's not really the clown, Shaggy has an idea, and he has to convince Scooby to go back out there to look for it. They immediately find him and he tries to hypnotize them, but Shaggy and Scooby just hold up mirrors so that he hypnotizes himself. He doesn't notice, so he just hypnotizes himself like an idiot. So now he's the chimp. He tried to hypnotize them into being chimps. So Shaggy once again with the plan that works. Scooby lures him out with bananas and Shaggy has him on a leash. Next we see him being unmasked, and it is Harry the Hypnotist. Apparently he used to work for them but got caught stealing, so they sent him to prison. He was just doing this to get revenge. Now the circus can open. The gang goes to the circus to see the acts, and Scooby and Shaggy have a surprise for them. Samson the strongman lifts a giant weight with both Scooby and Shaggy on it, and someone has a Scooby balloon in the background. Super fun ending. I'll give the villain a 10 out of 10 because he was scary. He was gross. And he straight up wanted to kill them. He wasn't trying to hide it, and it's just the way he did it. He fully has powers to hypnotize people. He made them do crazy stunts that alone would have gotten them killed, but just waking them up in the middle of it so they freak out and then they freeze and don't know how to get out of the situation that they've never been in. And his plan almost worked. Almost every single person left except for the ringleader. But he doesn't even count because that's just his business. Like, where is he gonna go? Even in the beginning, Max and Sam could have died in their little bicycle accident because that's like the equivalent of cutting the brakes of a car. And they know it, and we know it, and the clown knows it. He was just trying to off everybody because he got fired for stealing. Well, he also got sent to prison. Prison changes people. I'll give the mystery a 7 out of 10 because it was fun, but we didn't really find any clues. The build-up was good though. It was super mysterious because they just said it was someone jinxing them. We didn't know how or what was really going on. The reveal just wasn't super satisfying. It was just a guy that we never met. And they did go through all the circus acts, so I feel like maybe they could have dropped little hints that there was a hypnotist in one of the acts. That way we could have been like, wait a minute, that makes sense, you know? Overall though, the episode was so much fun and spooky, so I will give it an 8 out of 10. This episode begins on a raggedy little castle and we zoom into the tower and we see a werewolf. He growls at the mere sight of a car and it is the Mystery Machine. They're going to Franken Castle. This is where the werewolf's at. The castle was imported stone by stone from Transylvania. So they're here for a purpose and it is a fun one, but they do know about the werewolves living in Transylvania. On the side of the road there is a gypsy wagon and Daphne wants to get her fortune read, but Velma is being a buzzkill and says that it's just nonsense.
Fortune telling is all nonsense.
Girl, lighten up. They go in and I'm sorry, but this fortune teller is scary. Her eyes are literally red. And she sounds like the witch from The Wizard of Oz. The fortune teller said that she sees great danger for them if they stay here in the mountains. Evil forces from the world of the dead. Scooby says, oh shit, definitely the werewolves, but no one listens to him, obviously. So Velma asks her to tell them about Franken Castle, and she says that the caretaker ran away and they will meet their doom if they go in there. They don't give a fuck. Even after saying, damn, maybe she's right because there is a full moon out tonight. They just go into the castle. The castle keeps getting hit with lightning. They want to take a look around since this door fell, and they assume that it was a caretaker who decided to come back. Weird. Why? But whatever. They barely step foot into the door before a vampire pops out and tells them, go now or abandon all hope of seeing the sun again. Velma is like, sir, we have permission to be in here, actually.
Stop that. We have permission to visit this castle.
Can you imagine telling a demon that, Velma? Even if it's not a demon, you're gonna tell the crackhead living in this castle that you have permission to be there? The vampire fades into a bat and flies away. And the gang decide, okay, we're gonna go. As they're trying to leave, the door closes and Daphne slides right back down into the castle. She's stuck in the castle while everyone else is on the other side of the moat. And a Frankenstein comes out of nowhere and starts chasing her. So now we have a werewolf, a vampire, and a Frankenstein. Fred comes up with a plan to lasso a rope onto the statue and swing across. They swing over and the werewolf appears out of nowhere and Scooby takes no extra seconds to just run and leave his bestie behind. It starts chasing Shaggy and the knight trips the werewolf. Turns out Scooby was hiding inside the knight. So this is like the second time we saw Knight after the first episode, which I thought was fun. Shaggy and Scooby hide in the music room and they use his ventriloquism to fuck with the werewolf. He destroys the piano that Scooby's hiding in and Shaggy drops a chandelier on him, but they aren't able to trap him. Fred and Velma find a dining room with a fire in it. On the ledge, they see the vampire who turns into a bat again. Velma drops her glasses and almost walks straight into the fire, but it lifts up and Velma just disappears. Velma found herself in the torture room and look.
Shaggy, is that you over there?
Velma's blind ass hears a sound and tries to run away, but she falls into a barrel. Scooby sniffs out Velma because she has Scooby snacks on her, and thankfully Shaggy brought extra glasses for her. We hear Daphne scream for help and it turns out she's been locked in the dungeon. There's something watching them from this statue, and guess who's behind that statue? Dracula. There are no eye holes though, so we'll just ignore that. They try to pull Daphne out, but Dracula sneaks up on them. Scooby has had it. He ties up Dracula using the ropes and drags him to the dungeon. They don't even take time to unmask him, they just leave him there. They just want to go at this point. They go through a tunnel and lose each other. Daphne and Velma find Fred though like a second later. And Daphne lets them know that she found a clue. A message on the dungeon wall in 1668. I have filled them all, I may perish, but I'll be as rich as King Tut. They think it's talking about the fact that Egyptians were buried with their wealth, so they decide to go to the crypt. But they have to find Scooby and Shaggy first. Shaggy and Scooby find the scientist room. How fun is this?
It's a mad scientist rumpus room.
They see a body covered in a sheet and think it's one of the villains. So Shaggy thinks to blast it with the fire hose so that it can be a soggy ghost. It's just some wire that was made to look like a person, but imagine it was a corpse in there and they did that to it. The sheet gets wrapped around Scooby and he damn near drowns because Shaggy doesn't let up the fire hose. They start playing scientists and start mixing chemicals together, and it just reminded me of the second movie, the live action movie. While they're fucking around, the werewolf sneaks up on them, but they throw one of their concoctions and it stinks, so he leaves. They make fun of Frankenstein and play Mad Doctor. Shaggy straps Scooby down to the table, but it turns out that Frankenstein was in the other table. So Shaggy gets scared and leaves Scooby strapped up on that table with Frankenstein right next to him. I thought he would steal him, but he just pushes him towards Shaggy, so now they're just flying and he's chasing them. His stupid ass slams into a closed door and Shaggy and Scooby are able to find the rest of the gang. Down in the crypt, they find a coffin with 1688 carved into it. When they open it, it's Dracula. He was waiting for them, pretending like he was napping, and they woke him up. Shaggy is sick of getting chased, so he sets up a trap to catch Dracula with this tapestry. He keeps running though and just climbs right back to the coffin, and when they try to catch up with him, the coffin is empty. They do find a ruby, a diamond, and a gold earring, and Fred says that he's seen that earring before. Scooby then shows him a piece of the tapestry that got ripped off and it has pearls sewn into it. So they figure out the treasure was sewn into the tapestry, and Fred tells them that he saw those jewels and earrings on the fortune teller, so they have to go back. Once they're there, she asks them if they enjoy their little trip to the castle, but Scooby finds a tapestry under her. The fortune teller's real voice pops up.
Give me that, you mutt!
They try to run and Scooby catches up to them and they finally fall to the ground. A police officer pops out of nowhere because the caretaker called them up after he ran away. And after the fortune teller reveals himself, the officer recognizes him as Big Bob Oakley, alias the actor, a master of disguises and wanted in 7 states. He's been trying to get the Franken jewels by scaring everyone away from the castle. He says he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
Might have gotten away with it too. It wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
It wasn't even their fault because they didn't call the police. The caretaker did. So after you got the jewels, why did you wait in your wagon? You could have just left. The gang has a picnic and Shaggy of course drags it with the sandwich. They try to figure out the bat, but then they realize it was just a stuffed bat on the wire that Scooby then uses to steal Shaggy's sandwich, and the episode ends. I'll give the villain an 8 out of 10 because I really liked his commitment to the bit. He didn't have to be all 3 villains plus the fortune teller, but he did that for us, and he did it so quickly. He just wasn't smart. Like, why would you go back to the wagon? Why would you answer the door, pretend you're not home, or just leave? It's so simple. You got the jewels. You could have been out of there. It was funny though, once him dressed up realized the jewels are in the tapestry, he just ran for it. He wasn't trying to scare them anymore. He was like, okay, got it, bye, and just ran back to the coffin. But that's what I mean, like after he ran, he could have just left. Why didn't he? Or even if he didn't have enough time, couldn't you hide the jewels a little better? Like, what are these kids gonna do? They're gonna search your house or your wagon, whatever it is. They don't have the authority. I will give the mystery a 7 out of 10 because of the feeling of seeing that earring in the coffin and then being like, wait a second, who else had those earrings? It was amazing. And the motive wasn't the best. It was just treasure. It's always usually treasure. Other than that, I mean, it was interesting because we didn't know how many villains there were because there were 3 bad guys dressed up. Even though they were never in the same room together, you still kind of think, okay, they're separate. There was just a lot of chasing. I didn't even include some of it because it was just, there was nothing going on besides like goofy fun. But overall, I'll give the episode an 8 out of 10 as well. The setting was amazing. I loved it. I loved the villain. I thought he was so fun and so committed. And even just the fortune teller that wasn't even trying to be a villain was scary too. The episode opens up with the gang at the Department of Archaeology. They're looking at the mummy of Anka. Dr. Najib was the one who brought him in, but he's scared of the curse. Anka vowed that if he ever were removed from his tomb, he would come back to life and turn those responsible to stone. I thought it was funny how Scooby was fucking with his cat.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Najib.
The gang are there to help the professor. Shaggy finds this crazy coin and the professor tells him that it's part of an ancient curse that he hasn't been able to solve. The gang go to get some Sammys and they leave the professor there by himself. While he's there by himself, we see a figure pass by the door, break through the glass, and he sees that the mummy of Anka is gone. The gang is at the mall shop getting the nastiest sandwiches I've ever seen. Liverwurst and ice cream.
Liverwurst and ice cream? What'll they think of next?
Shaggy goes to pay. They're $1.50. And the coin he tries to give him is the coin from the museum, so he must have taken it by accident. They go back to the museum and see that the professor has been turned into stone, which doesn't make sense because we saw him get up, but his little stone statue is him reading a book. They see that the mummy is gone and the glass is broken, but Velma sees that the glass is broken on the inside. So how did he break out if the glass is inside? Scooby and Shaggy are geared up to the max, but Velma makes him take it off. And while they're putting the stuff away, they find the mummy in the closet. They lock his ass in there and, you guessed it, they dip. The mummy is strong as shit, by the way. They hide in the Egyptians exhibit and poor Scooby is shaking in the vase. The mummy finds them and they try to leave, and Shaggy finally puts his foot on the wall while trying to pull the door open. The door is locked so they can't escape. The mummy keeps slowly approaching them and Velma's stupid ass tries to shoo it away.
Shoo! Go away!
The mummy starts moaning coin, and Velma realizes that he must mean the old coin that Shaggy found. Velma refuses to give it to him. Scooby squares up with this mummy after he eats a whole box of Scooby snacks. He tries fighting him, but that mummy is thick, so he just dances his way out, leaving Shaggy and Velma behind. They show the mummy walking towards them again, but he was already right in front of them, so... Anyway, Scooby sneaks back and nails the mummy's wrap on his foot down to the ground. This allows them to be able to leave, and then the mummy is just stuck there, but he eventually breaks out. Fred and Daphne find some footprints outside and follow them to a car. It's Dr. Najib's car, and they find him inside, turned to stone. Velma sees the wrap on the floor that the mummy left behind. Velma says that it doesn't feel like it's 3,000 years old, so they decide to go to the school's laboratory to test it. There, Scooby just starts drinking chemicals and temporarily turns into a frog. Out of nowhere, the mummy appears and starts moaning for this coin again. Velma creates a little smoke screen and they're able to leave, but they forgot Scooby, and when they try to go back into the room, the back window's open and he's missing. I'm not okay with them constantly making this dog do stuff for them that puts him in danger, and then they just forget him every single time. Fred says that they better find him before he ends up like Dr. Najib.
We better find him before he ends up like the professor and Dr. Najib.
Dr. Najib!
I don't know why Fred pronounces everything so differently, but it's so funny. They find Scooby outside, turned into stone, and it's so sad.
Like, wow, too late. He's gone to that big boneyard in the sky.
But then we immediately see something digging right next to it, and it's Scooby, who just dug himself out of the shed. He cries with Shaggy about being turned into stone, but he's okay. They sense some trickery afoot. They decide to go back to the professor's room, and here they learn that Anka was not only the most feared, but he was also the richest. In the book, they find a statue that has a symbol that matches with the gold coin that Shaggy found. The mummy appears again and chases them out of the room. They hide in the wood shop, but danger-prone Daphne turns on the saw, and it cuts a hole in the ground, making them all fall into the pool. The mummy throws a saw into the pool and the saw just starts chasing them. They're able to paddle to the diving board and go to the edge, and they can rest for maybe a few seconds until the mummy comes down and starts chasing them again. This part was funny though because Shaggy accidentally sat on the mummy's lap and the mummy just let it happen for a little bit. They continue to run away, and we love a repeating background. Scooby and Shaggy crash into a shed where they find quick-drying mold cement. So this is how all the statues were made. Before they can think about it a little bit more, the mummy comes in and chases them into a shed. They think they lost him, but then when they open the door, they see the mummy bricking up the door so they can't escape. Scooby sets off a mousetrap on its hand and it just makes them more mad. And then they hear someone groaning in the corner and they realize it's the professor. He's been tied, gagged, and shoved into a bag. Shaggy assures them that they'll be back for him.
I'm fine.
groovy. Be back for you later.
Before they use the lawnmower to break out. He just left him there. The mummy is still chasing them. And there's another repeating background. The mummy somehow gets to the gym before Scooby and Shaggy. He's banging on the door until Scooby accidentally runs him over with the lawnmower. They take a little ride together and then it just shoots the mummy into a basketball net where he is caught. Fred then goes to unmask him and it is... Dr. Najib. So Dr. Najib knew about the coin. So after the kids left, he was going to go back into the museum and steal it, but Shaggy took it. And by the time he could get it together, the professor found him, so he had to tie his little ass up. Now that they know what the coin does, they find the statue that was in the book and they put it in the slot and it opens to reveal a diamond scarab worth a lot of money. This episode ends with the mummy just tossed somewhere and Scooby messing with everybody. The Mystery Inc. have found a lot of treasures for these people, so I think they get a little cut and that's how they're able to fund this lifestyle of theirs. I'll give the villain an 8 out of 10 because he wanted these people dead. He tied them up and left them for dead. There was no way he was letting them go. And the fact that he made himself a victim too is just so funny. I love when they do that. I'll give the mystery a 7 out of 10. It was a fun mystery to figure out. We had the coin, we tested the wrap, we found the cement. As the episode continued, we found the suspects one by one, so it kind of narrowed down who the villain could be. And it was also satisfying to figure out what the coin mystery was because the professor couldn't figure it out. These teenagers figured it out. The only thing though that was like was revealing that Scooby was okay immediately after we saw that he was a stone statue. I feel like they should have waited a little bit to make us be like, oh shit, this guy's taking us out. The main characters are not safe. You know, that just adds a little more tension to everything. I'm not even joking. Maybe like 30 seconds more would have been much better than the 3 seconds that we got. We didn't need that much, but we needed a little something. Overall, I'll give the episode a 7 out of 10 because it was a fun episode. And I feel like the villain was pretty good. There was just way too much chasing. It was just chase, stop, chase, stop, chase, stop. I get it. Thank you. This episode opens up in a spooky lake with the Nosferatu guy rowing this boat. The mystery gang are driving through after a failed fishing trip. Of course, Freddy's taking them through this spooky ass road because it's a shortcut and they're lost. They see the same Nosferatu guy and stop to ask him for directions. This guy just groans in their face. And it scares Shaggy because he thinks he's a zombie. They surprisingly book it out of there immediately. They get to Swamp's End and go into the store. The worker says that he's seen the zombie and the witch that brought him to life with voodoo. The witch showed up 6 months ago. Him and his partner Zeb were frog hunting and hurt her. Look at that background. And she made the zombie appear after performing a ritual. No one's been back at the swamp since, and they left all the cabins except for him and Zed's, who by the way refuses to leave his cabin. Scooby destroys the kitchen, so the gang sends Shaggy and Scooby to Zeb's house to check it out while they clean up his mess. At Zeb's house, it looks deserted. There are spider webs and Zeb isn't there. They see something outside and it's just a little chipmunk that Scooby is so excited to see for some reason. The zombie shuts the door menacingly, and Shaggy finds Zeb's voodoo doll in the cabin. And then they just leave. Shaggy shows the gang the voodoo doll, and they decide to do a stakeout. They wait in a rowboat for the witch and the zombie, and as soon as they pass, they start to follow them. They lose them, but they know that they're in the right place because of all the signs, which are also so much fun, and they were actually in my background for a little bit. They make it to the witch's shack and find voodoo dolls of themselves. She made them quick. Love this for a future movie though. Oh, so much fun. Scooby stabs Shaggy's doll and it works. He backs up into a fork. I know they say, cool, it's not voodoo, like you just backed into this fork, but I think him stabbing it was the reason he backed into the fork, you know? The witch starts cackling and appears via smoke. Daphne talks shit to her almost immediately, so the witch makes her disappear. I love her little portrait though. They look at where Daphne was standing and they see these footprints that are dragged, so it seems like there's a trap door. They go underneath and confirm when they see a bunch of footprints. These footprints lead to a riverboat and they see that the zombie's boat is right there. They zero in on the pole because it has this metal tip, and the zombie and the witch are both listening in on them from the second story of the boat. They split up and Shaggy tells Scooby this.
Every time we split up, it's like I'm stuck with you.
That is your bestie. We get to play Guess What Moves. They open the deck box and the zombie is inside of it and starts to chase them. Scooby and Shaggy are hiding, pretending to play poker, and the zombie just starts helping him too. Back with Fred and Velma, they're looking for Daphne, and through some hijinks, they're able to find a secret passageway with Daphne tied up and covered in the sheet. In the secret room, they find a winch, power tools, and a cutting tool. They wonder why a witch would need such tools, especially in a swamp. Velma figures it out, but before she can say what it is, the witch appears and starts chasing them, but she's also flying. And they fall into a coal pile, but they're able to escape the witch. The zombie is chasing Scooby and Shaggy, and Shaggy dresses up like the witch and tricks the zombie until Scooby's tail gives them away. Shaggy gives Scooby a Scooby snack so he can Popeye his way out of there, but they're trapped. The witch is on one side and the zombie's on the other, so they just jump off and get into the boat. The gang see this and they think that it's the witch, so they start beating his ass.
Look, it's the witch! And she's got Scooby in that boat! Tyler! No!
It's me!
They see that this boat is an airboat, so they use it to escape, and they see that the witch is at the end of the tunnel. They crash into her, but it turns out it's just a sheep painted with phosphorus to look like her, and her head is a balloon. They drop the anchor and it catches onto an armored truck for a bank. Inside there are sacks of money, which they will be using to catch the witch and the zombie. Scooby and Shaggy hide inside these sacks to get them to chase them. They swing a branch to push them into a wagon, but Scooby goofed and he gets stuck with them.
Oh no! Scooby goofed!
Shaggy ungoofs him,
I'll ungoof him!
and the zombie and the witch fall straight into the truck. Now we're at the reveal, and the sheriff is there and says that he's been looking for this bank truck for years. And now it's time to unmask the witch and the zombie, and they are
Zeb and Zeke.
Zeb and Zeke. They hijacked this truck and sunk it, but they lost it since it's been so long. So they invented this story, and the whole thing with the pole and the winch was that the pole was supposed to hit the truck and make a noise since they're both metal, and then the winch will pull it up. And the smoke trick was just this little smoke bead that Velma demonstrates. On the van, Scooby is fishing in a bucket and actually catches something, and he is just so cute. I'll give the villains a 9 out of 10 because I loved their design. I thought they looked so scary. I love that they really committed to this bit. They had voodoo dolls made up of people that they just met that same night. They also kidnapped Daphne, and the dynamic between the witch being the one that did all the planning and the zombie that was really just the muscle was terrifying, especially when he got Scooby. This is also the first episode that had 2 villains working together like this, unlike other episodes where the same guy or it was just one masked guy and just an obvious regular guy. You know, this time they both dressed up and they both committed to it. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10 because we didn't really meet anyone else in this episode, and there just happens to be 2 villains and one disappeared. We did see other villains in other episodes, but this time we see them together, so we know it's 2 separate people. Maybe that's why they did the balloon thing, because they wanted us to think that the witch was a balloon the whole time. Maybe that's what they were going for, but if it was, then that wasn't good. I'll give the overall episode an 8 out of 10 because, again, the atmosphere was so good and spooky. There was just a little too much nothingness going on in this episode, and I know a lot of these episodes have that, but I just feel like when they drag it too much, then you gotta take a little point or 2 off, you know? I would just like to interject that I have been filming for like 6 hours, so I feel like my voice is slowly disappearing because I never talk this much. This episode starts off with the same spooky music on a foggy ocean with the ship floating by. The captain is looking through some binoculars and spots the ghost ship of Redbeard. We hear him cackle. At the mall shop, the gang are reading the newspaper. Coast Guard baffled as 3rd freighter raided within a week. C.L. Magnus, owner of shipping line, claims it to be the ghost of Redbeard the pirate seeking revenge. Shaggy is busy making this ridiculous sandwich that Scooby steals. The gang seems to know Mr. Magnus because they feel bad that he's about to go out of business, and now a ghost ship is robbing his ass. Look at Fred though. The gang pulls up to his apartment, which is a penthouse. Like, I know in these times penthouses cost like $1.37, but damn, are we sure he's going out of business? And are we sure that he will not just be fine? His butler pops out and is super creepy and tells them he's busy and slams the door. They sneak back in as room service but trip over a bear rug. But luckily, Mr. Magnus is down for the help. Tells them a story about Redbeard, the pirate. Over 300 years ago, he terrorized the oceans, and it was his ancestors that brought him to justice. Now that he's back, Mr. Magnus is terrified. As they're talking, Scooby peeps that the butler is eavesdropping. The gang go out in a little boat looking for the ghost ship. They find the fog and start sounding the alarm so that Redbeard goes after them. The ghost ship is going full speed at their little rowboat. It goes straight over them and splits the boat in half. They use this opportunity to not drown and sneak onto the ghost ship, but it also means that they split up. On the boat, Velma looks like this, and they try to find Scooby and Shaggy. Scooby and Shaggy pass by a painting of Redbeard and make fun of him, and then Scooby draws a pair of glasses on him. Too bad for them, it has the real Redbeard right behind it, and they try to hide behind the door and Redbeard just stabs right through it, and Shaggy damn near got disemboweled. There's a fun little revolving background, and then there's just a floating sword, and Shaggy calls it the unfriendly ghost sword. And it was so cute because I thought they did a special where they met Casper, but it was just the Boo brothers. Ugh. They're able to escape the sword, but then they run into Redbeard and his goons. Back with the rest of the gang, they see Redbeard passing by, but they lose him almost immediately. They do find a clue though, and it is buckets of dry ice. And this is what's creating the fogginess and making it chilly. Immediately after this, they get locked in by Redbeard. It cuts back to Shaggy and Scooby, who are just sobbing on their knees while Redbeard is telling them that he's going to kill them because they can't do shit. Shaggy mentions that they can cook, so they go into the kitchen to show off their skills. They try to make a ghostly stew, which consists of a seawater boil, a chain, some ash, cobwebs, and some soap. They feed the shit to Redbeard, and he's like, actually, y'all can have it. They go full dopey and start burping bubbles to get out of there, and it works. They run away, but the two goons are after them. So Shaggy uses his ventriloquism skills, which I'm really glad is not just a throwaway line. It's something that he has used multiple times already. He uses that and a paper hat to make the shadow look as if it's Redbeard. And this works until they run into the real Redbeard. They hide under a bucket and accidentally walk the plank, but as they do this, it catches the attention of the rest of the gang who are locked up, so Shaggy and Scooby decide to go and save them. The ship goes into a skull cave at Skull Island, and they wonder why a ghost would need a hideout. As Shaggy and Scooby are paddling, they see a fin approach them, and Scooby just picks it up, and it's a fin with nothing else attached to it. Inside the cave, Redbeard tells the rest of the gang that he is going to make them a part of his crew. Fred says nah, and he attaches straw together, and he puts a piece of gum onto it. He uses that to get a key that's nearby, and it works extremely well. They actually get out of there. There are 4 tunnels, and just as they're about to decide which one to take, Shaggy and Scooby pop out behind them. Fred looks at the paper that Shaggy made his hat out of, and it's another clue. It's a ship's manifest. This is a list of cargo the freight was carrying and how much it's worth, but the ship isn't sailing until tomorrow. So how would a ghost get a hold of this? Fred finds some tire tracks, and Scooby follows them to a chest. They open it, and the chocolate lady pops out. It has a microphone inside and asks for a password. The password was apparently yum 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 and a liverwurst a la mode. The voice-activated secret tunnel opens. This is where Redbeard has stolen cargo. Unfortunately for them, Redbeard and his goons are there. Redbeard lowers the iron door, traps them inside, and then sends his goons after them. They hide behind the crates, which works until the floating sword pops up, and Shaggy calls it the gay blade of the ghost set again.
It's the gay blade of the ghost set again!
I don't know what that means. Again, if Philly tries to slice and dice them, but Scooby finds some Scooby snacks and finds the power to escape. Shaggy finds some liverwurst and starts dueling with the sword. He loses, and Scooby eats the flying liverwurst. And then the sword cuts open a barrel that's filled with some type of liquid, so they both grab a cup and just start drinking. They refuse to take anything serious. It was literally oil, by the way. The rest of the gang used plungers and bow and arrows to hang the goons from the ceiling. Redbeard catches up to Scooby and Shaggy, and they tickle him with an egg beater, then go on a jackhammer to escape. Again, not taking anything serious. But then they jackhammer onto the ceiling and then fall onto Redbeard and crash into the goons who already got down from the suction cups. So now that they're caught, it's time to unmask the villains. Redbeard turns out to be Mr. Magnus. Shaggy says, I thought the butler always did it. The other two are just hired henchmen, so not important. The motive was Mr. Magnus was going to lose his streamline and needed a lot of money for it. So he robbed his own ship and sold his cargo. He also had the ghost sword operating with wires, but no. It is just way too precise for it to have been wires and no one operating it, but whatever. Last mystery is all the fog that came from the dry ice. They would drop it into water and this created all the fog that they saw. I have a vivid memory of this because I wanted to also do this very badly with the fog.
Scooby-Doo!
I'll give the villain a 9 out of 10 because he was really trying to kill these kids. He made it super clear and he would toy with them. For example, when he said if Shaggy and Scooby could make him a good meal, he would let them live. All just to make them eat the meal. He had no intention on letting them live, only to give them hope that they were going to be able to escape. Same with the kids. He knows he's not a ghost, but tells him that he's going to make them part of his crew because they think he's an actual ghost and he's going to turn them into ghosts too. No, he's just going to off them. The reason that it's not a 10 out of 10 was because I didn't find his design scary. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10. The 3 clues we found were the dry ice, the ship's manifest, and the tire tracks. Maybe even the hideout could count. All of these pointed to it not being an actual ghost, which at this point, yes, again, we know it's not an actual ghost. It would be more interesting to figure out who the villain was while also figuring out that it's not really a ghost, because that element is needed, but it can't just stand on its own. We have to know who the villain is too. The only reason it's not lower is because they did throw in the butler eavesdropping and looking like the villain because he was weird and creepy. And yeah, they bamboozled us just a little bit, especially because this villain could have easily not asked for help. He let these kids in and was like, yeah, you guys can help me figure out who's doing this to me and it's just me. Kind of avoided it by being like, you know what, I'm gonna cut my losses, I'm just gonna move on, it's okay, things happen. My voice is going, oh no. Overall, I'll give the episode an 8 out of 10. The villain really saved it, as well as the fun things the gang kept doing. They're just a funny little group. This episode opens in a spooky ass town and a spaceship is flying by. This Mars attack looking alien pops out and cackles. With the gang, Shaggy offers Fred a sandwich and Fred says, not one of your jaw stretcher specials.
Not one of your jaw stretcher specials.
Fredward, please. Shaggy is making the most rancid sandwich in the back. And the van runs out of gas. How do you let this happen, Fred? You are the only one who drives. They are right in front of the farmhouse from the opening, and Velma says maybe there's gas in there, so in there we go. They go to knock, and the homeowner, fully armed, is like, get off my property, you hear? Y'all damn reporters always harassing me, now get. He said it exactly like that. All Freddy gathers from that is, reporters?
Reporters?
Daphne's like, sir, we just want to buy some gas. This man says, I don't believe you city slickers. Get the fuck off my property or I'm gonna shoot you. And Velma's like, oh hey, but like, why are reporters bothering you so much? He has a gun. Apparently, ever since that ghostly craft appeared, he tells them it's not just a saucer, it's also something creeping around. And they see footprints and they're glowing, but they start disappearing. Thankfully, the farmer gave them gas instead of some bullets. And as they're driving, they see the saucer. It lands behind a hill and they go straight to it. It landed somewhere around an old abandoned airfield. They find more footprints and follow them into a shed. And they hear this weird noise coming from inside.
What's that funny noise?
Let's go inside.
The tracks disappear once they get to the entrance and they realize that the noise was coming from this generator. As they're inside, they see the spaceship land in front of them. They decide to split up and try to find the ghost from the ship. Regular split-ups, Scooby and Shaggy are the first to run into it. While fucking around, of course, they go inside one of the airplanes and the ghost pops up behind them, so they inflate a life raft and are able to escape. The rest of the gang find a machine shop. Inside, Daphne wants to go the second she touches grease. Get it together, girl. This is a clue. There's fresh grease. This tells us that the tools have been recently used. The alien pulls a lever and hooks Fred in the air. Now it's up to everyone to rescue Fred. It's funny because everyone always says that Daphne's the one that always gets captured, kidnapped, but Fred also gets kidnapped more than I remember because they found them so boring, and they're kind of right. They're not really super fun. They rescue Fred and then find Scooby and Shaggy, and they tell them what the alien looked like. And while they're talking, the alien pops up, and for once Fred is like, yeah, let's go. Scooby and Shaggy go to hide in the mess hall and start looking for food. Scooby finds a whole chicken and ham and finishes it all. He's wondering why this ghost needs all this food, and just as they try to leave, it pops up again. The rest of the gang find a newspaper from the day before and an article that's circled about where the ghost craft was reported. Scooby and Shaggy hide out in the house, but they're found yet again, and they can't leave because Scooby threw the keys out the window. So they climb out to get the keys and then go back inside to unlock the door. Even the ghost alien is like, what are you guys doing? The gang reunite, but they have no damn clues to share. Scooby smells gasoline from this exhaust pipe from this old truck, and they're confused because it has 4 flat tires, but they look underneath and see 4 more tires that are completely fine. The Jeep starts running out of nowhere, and then the alien thing pops up out of nowhere. Suddenly 4 more ghosts pop up behind some doors. The gang dip, and Scooby and Shaggy find an equipment room with a microphone that they think probably is hooked up to an air horn. And they're right. The rest of the gang hears them and they try to go to the tower. But with them comes the alien ghost, and Scooby and Shaggy are not trying to get got, so they jump off the tower because they found some parachutes. I stopped that sentence prematurely, sorry. The farmer that was going to off them called the cops after seeing their car out there, but they haven't caught the alien ghost guy. They run straight into a wind tunnel and his whole outfit just comes off. He was wearing rubber boots with phosphorus, kind of like the scuba guy. The villain is revealed, and it is
my next-door neighbor.
the farmer's next door neighbor. So the spacecraft was just a projector. The noises were sped up noises on the loudspeaker. The other aliens were stuffed dummies, and the Jeep was remote controlled. And this is why he did this. The Air Force was going to open the field again and would have needed the land for the jets. So he wanted to scare everyone away so that he can get the land for very cheap.
And I'd have done it too, if you kids hadn't have come along.
Scooby-Doo.
This was a quick episode. I will give the villain a 6 out of 10 because he was spooky. I thought the craft was real, but he didn't do too much besides appear out of nowhere and run a little and giggle. So he wasn't too menacing or too threatening or made me feel like we were in danger. I'll give the mystery a 4 out of 10 because the clues again didn't point to who this was, or even that it wasn't an alien. Like, who knows, maybe the alien also could have used gas for our vehicles. Maybe it figured it out. So overall, I'll give the episode like a 6 out of 10 because it was entertaining, but it wasn't really my favorite. And then just being his neighbor for like the same reason that he just wanted the land for cheap. I mean, these motives are becoming a little repetitive. Why can't we just get a villain that wants to cause harm to people that they don't know, just to cause harm? This episode opens up with a spooky background. It's a big house next to the beach that the gang is taking a boat to. They are going to a reading of a will. Apparently Scooby is inheriting this. He was named in the inheritance of Colonel Beauregard Sanders. $1 million. It's to be split between 4 relatives and him because he saved them from a fish pond. A creepy guy named Cosgood Creeps, attorney for the colonel, answers the door, and he's the one reading the will because his partner, Mr. Crawls, couldn't make it. So they're Creeps and Crawls. Colonel Sanders told them to play a record for everyone. On the record, he greets his cousin Simple, nephew Norwell, cousin Maldehyde, cousin Slicker, and his old friend Scooby-Doo. They are all getting a share of $1 million only if they can spend the night in the mansion. He throws in that it's haunted. Anyone who can't make it, their share goes to the others. The lawyer says he'll be back in the morning to see who made it. And to be honest, I simply would just not do this and then come back before the lawyers get there. Who's gonna know? Scooby is shook, but the rest of the gang are gonna stay with him because they're supportive and they love him. Shaggy is wearing his little gown and hat. Scooby is wearing his robe and slippies and goes to take a bath. Ooh, we get to play Guess What Moves for the first time in a while. The scariest ghost looking guy pops up out of it, and then the wall opens up and snatches Scooby all the way to the basement, where there's a ghost in some chains. Scooby's not playing and just runs straight through the door to tell the rest of the gang. They don't believe him, especially when they go check out the tub and realize that it's bolted to the floor, which is just rich coming from them when they've been through so much together and see how many trapdoors there are in the places that they specifically go to. Trust me, I get it. It's like the thing, but let's write our episodes with a little bit more continuity. I mean, Shaggy's ventriloquism gets brought up, even though that was from, the first episode. So why can't we give Scooby the benefit of the doubt? Maybe he's not fucking crazy. He went to go take a bath and he's coming from the basement out of nowhere. Downstairs, a ghost pops up out of the clock and it goes upstairs, loud as fuck, to where the other relatives are staying. The rest of the gang hear it and go to check on the relatives. They start with Cousin Simple, and the only thing that's left of him is his nightcap. On the mirror, there's a message. The first is gone, the rest will go unless you leave the island and row, row, row. Phantom Shadow. The gang make a dummy Scooby and plan to leave the door unlocked so when the Phantom comes in, they can catch it. Scooby and Shaggy are hiding on the pole outside, and too bad for them because the Phantom Shadow pushes that shit. Velma tries to save them, but they just fall straight to the bottom. They go into the cave that's there and find some footprints. Velma tries to convince Shaggy to follow the footprints, but he's not with that. So they all go together, and it leads to a bunch of Civil War relics. All Confederate, by the way. One of the uniforms starts flapping and chases them throughout the cave. They run to the elevator and they see it just turned out to be a duck inside the uniform. They use the elevator and it goes up to Cousin Slicker's room. He isn't there and the only thing left is his nightcap. They find the rest of the gang and they find out that the rest of the relatives are also gone, which just leaves Scooby. They hear an organ and go to investigate, not knowing that the Phantom Shadow is right behind them. That name is so cute, by the way. Phantom Shadow, like, ooh, you thought of that? They reach the organ but find no one playing it. They do find sheet music. On the cover, they find a note that says, "Feed the organ and watch the floor." Scooby really wants to play this organ. He gets dressed up and everything, and as he's playing, the walls start moving towards them. I would just like to say that everything's connected. Matthew Lillard, who played Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo live action, was in 13 Ghosts. There's a scene where the walls are moving in. Had to throw that in there. Scooby keeps playing the organ and the wall stops. So they realize that feed in the notes is actually the notes that they need to play. And once they do, the floor opens up. This leads to coffins and only one is open and it's Scooby shaped. The other coffins open up and it has all of the other cousins in them. They're dead. The Phantom Shadow appears out of nowhere and its twin also appears. The Phantoms start chasing them and they climb into a chandelier, but they are the kings of not taking anything serious, so they're literally giggling on the chandelier while the Phantom Shadows are looking for them. The ceiling opens up and the other Phantom Shadow just snips the chandelier and they fall down. They fall straight into the wine cellar and they open the corks on the wine bottles to have them shoot out to the ghosts, and that's how they're able to get away. So many shenanigans happen as they're running away from these guys. Velma makes him pick up a phone call. They appeared on Scooby and Shaggy's tandem bike. Scooby and Shaggy tricked them into dancing to a hole in the floor. Velma notices green stuff on Shaggy's finger and Fred says, "I need to go to the laundry room." The plan is to use a fan, soapy floor, spring-loaded ironing board, and a washing machine. They basically want to wash off the ghosts. So they test it out with Scooby and he gets loaded into the washing machine. For once, Fred, Daphne, and Velma are the bait. But Scooby turns on the fan too early and in reverse, so the washing machine is flying with both of them in it. They chase the two ghosts and go out the window to the cave where they know the elevator leads and catches the both of them. They call the sheriff and hang the ghosts to dry, and they are...
Mr. Creeps and his partner, Mr. Crawls.
The lawyers, creeps and crawls. They first pretended to be a ghost so that Colonel Sanders could think it's haunted, and then both came to scare the cousins so they kept control of the inheritance. The cousins in the coffins were just dummies, guys. They're not really dead, come on. So since everyone else left, Scooby gets the inheritance. Unfortunately, it's in Confederate money. A random haunted bone fully appears out of nowhere and they all just laugh because Scooby isn't afraid of haunted food. Can we discuss this later? Cause what the fuck? I'll give the villains a 6 out of 10 because their initial meeting was scary, but then it just lost the spook when they wouldn't stop cackling. The motive was also just meh because if it was left to the family, can lawyers even take control of it? Does it work like that? It's just really funny that they did all that though for it to just be Confederate money. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10 too because it was engaging. I think the spookiest clue of all though was the cousins in the coffins and the fact that there was a Scooby-shaped coffin next to it. That really makes you think that people are getting off in here. After that, it was pretty meh for me. So I'll give the episode overall a 7 out of 10. The concept as a whole is hilarious, like having to stay in this haunted house to get $1 million, but it's Confederate money. Again, like I said, there were spooky parts which I liked, but a few spooky scenes isn't gonna save the whole episode. But it still didn't even do that bad. 7 out of 10, pretty solid. Okay, so this is the last episode of the first season. There were a lot of episodes this season. There were 17 episodes. Their season 2 premiered the same year season 1 ended. So I don't think they really planned for this to be a whole grand finale for season 1 because they already knew they were going to have a season 2. So let's just see where it ended. This episode opens in a snowy town with the wolf howling at the moon. And there is a snow creature that's also growling. The gang appears at Wolf's End Lodge. They're here for a weekend of skiing. I too have gone skiing and I skipped the lessons. Big mistake. I just have this fear of skiing because I'm scared that I'm gonna break my ankles if I tilt a little bit to the wrong way. It took me like 45 minutes to get down the bunny hill where little kids are just zooming past me. They go in and they meet the front desk person and then this random guy comes in. He has that voice that's very specific to like henchmen.
It's cold out there.
It's always the henchmen of mad scientists who use them as experiments or they were an experiment. Anyway, he comes in and asks Mr. Greenway to put his suitcase away in a safe space. And he aggressively pets Scooby.
Nice doggy. Nice doggy.
Scooby hates it. That was Mr. Leach according to Mr. Greenway. He finds this funny for some reason. So much happened in like this 1 minute. He takes them to the rooms and it's boy girl obviously. He tells them to lock their doors and windows or else the snow ghost will come and get them and turn them into ghosts. Again, he starts cackling. What is with these characters just cackling in their faces? Shaggy goes to lock his window and the snow beast is he's just there. And so Shaggy just books it. He goes outside for some reason. They find footprints outside and decide to take snowmobiles to follow them. The snow ghost lurks and watches them as they drive by. And when they reach a chasm, they see it across a hill. The snow ghost fully flies over to their side. They try to follow him but find nothing once they get behind some trees. They see a cave with some light and try to make Scooby go in to see what it is because Scooby is the fastest. Scooby says nah and does this. It doesn't work though, so into the cave he goes. He follows the scent to the cave, trips and just splats in the cave. Inside there's a bunch of stuff from Tibet, like gongs, statues, and artifacts. They ring the gong and some guy comes out behind the curtain. This is the temple of Fu Lan Chi. He fully believes the snow ghost story because he's the one that he's after. He tells him that he came face to face with the Yeti and when he tried to follow him across the ledge, it plummeted to its death. He ran into its ghost sometime later and has been hiding from it for years. They hear a roar and it just turns out to be the wolf they keep seeing. This is his friend and he feeds him in exchange for protection. Fred thinks that the Yeti is after something besides Mr. Chi. On the way back, they find more footprints, but these are covered in sawdust. Instead of following them to where they go, they decide to trace them back to where they came from, and they find a sawmill. They go in to investigate, but so does the Yeti. The Yeti snatches a Velma. Also weird, the wall is suddenly much closer to them than it was before. But we get to play Guess What Moves. Scooby goes after Velma's yelps, and when he finds her, she's chained up to this log that's headed towards a saw. He goes to get a bigger saw, but the Yeti is holding the other end. Scooby shakes him off and just chomps on the log to save Velma. The Yeti hated that and chases them through those log slides. And he sends another log with dynamite in it, but Scooby just uses his tail as a propeller to get the fuck out of there. They meet up with Daphne and Fred, who just randomly split from the rest of the gang without any explanation. What are you guys always doing? Your friends are dying and you guys are doing what exactly? The only person missing is Shaggy, so they go to look for him. They find him moaning and groaning, and he's white as shit. He falls into some water, and it turns out he was just covered in white stuff. So since Shaggy wasn't turned into a ghost, this means that the snow ghost must not really be a ghost. The Yeti appears and they start running. Scooby gives Shaggy brain damage and then hides him under a bucket. So the snow ghost chases the rest of the gang, who also hide, and Daphne hides into this hollowed out log that has jewels hidden inside of it. The Yeti is still chasing Scooby and Shaggy even whilst they're upon a snowmobile. It's just gliding towards them. They end up on thin ice and freeze into little cubes once they hit the water. They fall off a cliff and are stuck, so Fred, Velma, and Daphne find them and pick them out. This though gives them the idea to freeze the ghost into a block of ice. While they're planning it, the snow ghost appears out of nowhere, so Scooby tries to throw water on him, but it freezes mid-throw. The Yeti grabs Scooby and tries to throw him off the ledge. But Shaggy, being a real one, throws a really big snowball at him, so then they fall off and snowball down the hill. The snowball hits the side of the mountain, and the Yeti is unmasked without anyone even trying, and it turns out to be Mr. Greenway. They call the coppers, and both Mr. Greenway and Mr. Leach are tied up. They're the masterminds of the biggest ring of jewel thieves in the country. Mr. Leach would bring the stolen jewels in suitcases, and then Mr. Greenway would hide them in the hollowed out logs that Daphne found and then sneak them across the border. He then would disguise himself as a snow ghost after getting the idea from Mr. Chi, and he looked like he could fly using these transparent skis. And this episode ends with Scooby destroying the squirrel's home. I'll give the villain an 8 out of 10 because he was scary and, again, fully wanted to off them. Like, can you imagine how many other people got stuck here and he just killed because he snooped around a little too much? The accomplice was just annoying and so obviously evil because he wouldn't stop laughing. Something to look out for: if you see people laughing this much, this maniacally in Scooby-Doo shows, are probably the villain. And I like his motivation. I feel like he executed his little evil scheme very well. He used the job he already had to make probably millions, and I respect him for that. I'll give the mystery a 7 out of 10. Finding the jewelry in the logs was a fun clue, and hearing Mr. Chi's story made it seem like there was something much bigger than it actually was. We also had no idea how this big ass ghost was just flying everywhere, and the explanation was, it was pretty funny, like transparent skis. I totally wouldn't see that in the snow. Have you guys ever been like in deep snow? Like, things get lost very easily. Overall, I'll give the episode a 7 out of 10 too. I thought it was equally spooky, and the funny moments did make me laugh. So it was a fun episode to end the season with. Was it the best? No, but it wasn't the worst. And that's it for season 1. Okay, now we get to go to season 2. So season 1 was a really, really solid start. I mean, it established so much. I don't think season 2 is that much different after watching it. Same exact vibe, so let's start it. This episode opens up in the city. We're in a rare jewel store when some creep is sneaking in and stealing one of the necklaces. This is the ghost of Hyde, according to a cop that was standing outside. We go to the mall shop where we see the mystery machine outside, but hold on, we're not cutting to the gang just yet. This weirdo hides inside the mystery machine. Inside the mall shop, the waiter asks Freddy how the magic show was in the high school. So they're in high school, just going on weekend vacations with each other, no adult supervision. They start going home, and in the van they're talking about a movie about a blob who hid inside its victims' cars, and then the creep pops out from under the blanket. They tell Scooby to get the blanket since the heater is broken, and Scooby just finds this guy smiling at him. He looks at us like, So he tells them that there's a crackhead in the car. They just think it's the ghost, and thankfully for them, it disappears into the fog. Velma tells him that it's the ghost of Mr. Hyde, the jewel thief, so this is a well-known story. They follow him to this house where he goes into. They try to sneak around the back and they find the back door unlocked, but then the floor just opens and they fall inside. I've also seen this movie before. We get a spooky location. Some random man comes in and is like, "What are you guys doing here?" And it turns out his name is Dr. Jekyll. Interesting name. He's like, "To be honest, I might be Mr. Hyde." Wait, is it Dr. Hyde or Mr. Hyde? I think he loses his doctorate once he becomes a villain. He says for the past 3 years he's been working on the formula for a vitamin that you only have to take once. He passed out from it and woke up with muddy shoes, and he found some jewels in his pocket. But Velma's like, "If that was you, then why is the mud on your shoes dry? Like, it should be wet." Whatever. They split up and Scooby and Shaggy take the attic. But first we get to play the first Guess What Moves of the season. They find a chest of bats and some costumes. They see the shadow of someone and try to run, and Shaggy once again tries to open the door correctly. Thank you, Shaggy, for that. Scooby tries some other doors, but they just keep getting smaller and smaller, and then he gets cursed out by a mouse. The shadow turns out to be Helga, Dr. Jekyll's housekeeper. She was like, "I just cleaned this place." We cut to the rest of the gang searching the fireplace, and they find an unburnt newspaper clipping of Helga the Great, famous acrobat and trapeze artist. Helga will give a special performance of her human fly act. This is a daring acrobatic stunt done on buildings or high places. They're like, "Why the fuck is Homegirl working as a housekeeper?" Scooby and Shaggy are now in the library and we get to play Guess What Moves. Too bad Dr. Professor Hyde is behind it and he starts chasing them. They hide inside the TV and the ghost turned on the TV, so they pretend to be shows, but they accidentally poke Mr. Hyde, so he catches onto them. They start sliding down the stairs and crash into Velma and all fall into a laundry chute. They tell them that they think Dr. Jekyll has turned into Mr. Hyde again, but Velma tells him that he was just reading in his study. Scooby finds some clothes and muddy shoes behind an ironing board, and there's also a feather duster that Helga was using when she was cleaning the attic. So they decide to look in Helga's room for more clues. In Helga's room, they find a can of phosphorus paint and a bottle of knockout drops under her mattress.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Freddy?
I'm thinking this mystery is pretty close to being solved.
Shaggy pops in and tells him that he found something interesting in the fruit bowl, but before he can tell him, he gets snatched up by the ghost, Mr. Hyde. Scooby wastes no time, but it's too late. He's gone. Mr. Hyde took Shaggy to the basement and straps him to the table. He tells him that he's going to turn him into a frog. Scooby bursts in and we get something new. We get a little chase song.
Yesterday I got to dreaming.
This is different from the other season where there was just chase scenes whenever the gang split up or whenever throughout the episode. It didn't really matter. But now it's kind of more concentrated in this one little segment, which is just known as the chase sequence. And doing this, they can do a lot more cartoony things. The chase ends after Shaggy gets a charge of Scooby snacks and crashes through the house. Shaggy shows the gang that he found suction cups in the fruit bowl, and they realize that this is no ghost and they know who it is. Scooby and Shaggy find Mr. Hyde and lure him into the trap. He opens the curtain and finds another one of him. He then runs and finds even more. It was the gang dressed up like him. Look at Velma. He runs through the back door where the trapdoor was open, so he falls through and they trap him in a mattress. Velma says it's time to unmask him and it should be Helga, but it's actually Dr. Jekyll. Since his experiments didn't work because he's trash, he turned to a life of crime and wanted to frame Helga. He planted a bunch of fake clues, and turns out the suction cups were the most important clue because Helga, being the skilled acrobatic, wouldn't have needed them in order to perform all these stunts. Scooby demonstrates and the episode ends. I will give the villain a 10 out of 10 because he doesn't give a fuck. He hid out in these kids' van scared the shit out of them, stole, framed his housekeeper. He was also scary looking and he was threatening. He snatched up Shaggy and telling him that he's gonna turn him into a frog, knowing that his experiments don't work, so he was literally just gonna poison him. That's amazing. I'll give the mystery a 10 out of 10. I loved it. We got fake clues, fake suspects, and we got bamboozled. They never explained where he got all those extra costumes for, but I'm assuming he just needed extra for some reason. Overall, I'll give it a 10 out of 10. I love being bamboozled, especially when it comes to mysteries, because I don't want the obvious answer sometimes. I want a little bit of challenge in my mysteries, so I really like that I got tricked this episode, and I like feeling the tension of a disgusting crackhead in the back of the van, and also really like that the chase scene was finally condensed to one little sequence instead of being scattered all throughout the episode. That way the episode can actually feel more well thought out than just randomness throughout the entire thing. What a solid start. I absolutely loved it. Now, this is the other episode that I remember extremely vividly. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. This is the first time I'm revisiting a lot of these episodes since literally I was like 5. It's not that long since I'm only like 21. This episode opens up in a spooky temple with bats flying out. Inside are 2 men praying to this giant statue when someone pops out of a green fire next to it. He tells them that the mask of Zentuo must be returned to the temple. 2 masked guys say NP Master and they go. At the Chinese New Year's parade, the gang's watching a dragon pass by. Scooby and Shaggy are fucking around while everyone else is just staying still. They go into some shops and the store owner shows them this golden mask, and Daphne is rich as fuck because she's just like, I'll take it. After they leave, the masked goons go in and they're like, hey, where's the mask? And the store owner's like, she just took it. Sorry. So they go after her. The gang run into the masked fellows and Scooby tries his hardest to scare them off, but it doesn't work. So he goes into the laundry shop where he speaks Chinese. He uses the steam presser to create a smoke screen so he can run away. The gang takes the mask to Mr. Fong. He's the only Oriental art dealer in town, and he tells him that this mask was stolen from the crypt of the great warlord Zentuo. Now his ghost has come to reclaim the mask. He tells him that the other 2 are zombies, and if they're going to keep the mask, they're going to be in great danger. Take a guess if Daphne gives a fuck. She does not. While they're driving though, they can see that they're being chased by the zombies. And Daphne's like, oh, I didn't know that they could fully drive cars. Fred books it and the chase scene starts. Fred is zooming in this van, going from building rooftop to building rooftop. Scooby even falls out the back and has to follow him on the bike, which he immediately crashes and falls onto the zombie's car. You can see here that Scooby's still in the van. Oops. After driving through every terrain possible, a banana peel takes out the van and they crash into some dead fish. While Scooby's trying to fish out Shaggy, his arm turns green. Before they know it, the 2 zombies kidnap Daphne and take her to the back of their van. Ugh. I just feel like if they got the mask, leave her alone, but whatever. They find the note they left behind and Scooby figures out that it's a mirrored image. He is a detective now. It says the temple in the hills, and Velma knows exactly where it is, so off they go. They make it to the temple and look around for clues. The main guy is already wearing the mask whilst he's looking at where they're going. Fred and Velma find a secret passage where Daphne's tied up, but it's a trap. The door closes and they're stuck there too. Scooby and Shaggy are taking a look when they run into the Ghost of Zentuo and hijink their way out of there by pretending like they're not scared. Shaggy keeps drawing lines and tells him not to cross them or he's gonna get fucked up, but it doesn't work, so they run straight into the zombies. They put on some Chinese accents and pretend to run a restaurant for ghosts.
Welcome to Shags and Scooby's Haunted Chinese Restaurant.
Why this worked as long as it did is just... They actually managed to run away until they run straight into a gong and Zentuo ties them up and ties them to fireworks. Lit fireworks, I might add. They use their badonks to put the fuse out and bounce onto a statue that opens the trap door where the rest of the gang are trapped in. They go to a pigeon coop where there are carrier pigeons and they find a note that says November 10th, 12:30, Hidden Cove. So they decide to set a trap and solve the mystery. And it's an intricate ass trap. The Ghost of Zentuo has to step on a board that will then light up and follow the train tracks from a toy train into the pigeon coop where they're going to trap him. But Scooby didn't finish the job of laying out the tracks, so he's just flying around now with Scooby. They fall out of a window and then they're trapped in a sack. So the trap didn't work, but somehow they still caught them. They unmasked the ghost and it turns out to be Mr. Fong. Each month a new mask was sent to him, and each mask had a roll of recording tape with names and dates of all their shipments. They would take this info, write it on paper, and then send it to other members of their gang using carrier pigeons. The ghost story was just used so that no one goes to the temple. And this episode ends with a mouse stealing the last Scooby snack.
Outfoxed by a mouse!
I'll give the main villain a 3 out of 10 because he was going to kill Shaggy and Scooby, but that was the only time he did anything interesting. If I have to rate the other ones, I'll give them a 1 out of 10 because they didn't seem like zombies, they just seemed like guys in a mask. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10. It was okay, but the clues didn't really tell you much besides some trickery was afoot, and there's always trickery afoot, so what is the point? It would have been cool to see them discover that there was a button in the mask without actually finding out what the note was for, so that we knew at least there was more to this mask than just monetary value, because why would a random store owner just have it, you know? I'll give the overall episode a 4 out of 10. It wasn't super fun. I feel like they just filled it up with a lot of nonsense, and it's just so weird because I remember really liking this episode because I was like, oh my god, Daphne's been kidnapped, like, is she okay? This episode opens up with the driver stopping on the road because of a fallen tree. This creepy green guy pops out from the bush next to the freshly chopped down tree, and he begins to creep up on the driver. Random little note, but I always thought these two guys were the creeper because they kind of look the same. The gang are driving and talking about the school dance. I feel like they're making it more obvious that they're in high school. Even Scooby is getting ready for this dance. As they're driving, they see the driver from before. He's a bank guard and his car is fucked up on the inside. The bank guard wakes up and gives him a piece of paper and says, "The flame will tell." This poor guy is concussed. Scooby finds the bank's president's address. They take the guards to his house. They try to call the sheriff, but he is out of town and won't be back for a few hours. What? They tell the president about the note, and he tells them that the creeper is someone who keeps robbing the bank. Every time he does, the doors are still locked from the inside. So obviously he's a phantom who can walk through walls. He tells them they can go to the dance, and off they go. This dance party is wild. We see other teens for the first time ever, I think. They're fucking up this dance floor. Outside, the creeper pulls the main breaker, and they're pissed that someone fucked up their dance. They decide to continue the party at the malt shop. What do you mean? That's like going to the diner and trying to throw a party. But everyone leaves except for Scooby and Shaggy, who want to clean up the buffet table. They go to throw out the empty plates next to that ugly scarecrow, and then they realize it's the creeper. They run over Velma and she loses her glasses. The creeper starts chasing the rest of the gang, and they do not help Velma find her glasses. The chase song starts. The creeper is more interested in the paper that the bank guard gave them than really catching them. They escape by horse, but they get split up in the process. Scooby and Shaggy hide in a chicken coop, and we get to play Guess What Moves. Scooby also hatches an egg, so Scooby is a mother. The rest of the gang survive their carriage crash, and they find a car hidden in the bushes, and on the floor of the car they find torn up negatives.
Negatives. Torn up negatives. Somebody doesn't want somebody to see a picture of somebody.
This line that Velma says brings up a specific memory in my head, and I can't explain it. I think it was maybe on a commercial on Boomerang that played a lot, because they replay their commercials like it was their job.
Torn up negatives. Somebody doesn't want somebody to see a picture of somebody.
Get a clue with Scooby-Doo.
Yo!
Negatives. Torn up negatives. I didn't even write down the line and I just knew it. My mind. The barking chick is still following Scooby and Shaggy, and so is the creeper. But the brave little chick starts barking at the creeper, and it's just so cute. Scooby goes to save it, and they meet up with the rest of the gang. They find some footprints and follow them to a gorge. I'm learning a lot of new words. I'm scared also that these words are outdated and no one's gonna know what I'm talking about. Let's meet at the gorge, guys. They want Scooby to go across the ropes and unroll the planks for them. And the chick steals a Scooby snack that they try to bribe him with. And yet Scooby still has to do this, which is kind of bullshit. Like, someone else can do it. One of you guys with thumbs can do it, thanks. He does it regardless, and they find the Hermit of the Hill. He insists that they stay for dinner. Velma thinks he's the creeper. And when the Hermit tries to feed them squirrel soup, they just leave. And this is what he does. They try to go back to the mystery machine, but the fucking creeper is in the driver's seat. Get out of there. He chases them back to the bar, and the creeper catches up with Velma, and she says, "You wouldn't hit somebody with glasses, right?"
You wouldn't hit somebody with glasses on, would you?
And I wonder if this is where Wreck-It Ralph got that joke from. Anyway, the creeper snatches them shits right up, so Velma kicks him in the shin. Is this the first time we see someone actually hit these fucking freaks? Why can't we jump them? Oh, they did try to jump the witch, but it turned out to be Shaggy. For sure, she can aim perfectly now. Again, she talked to a pole and thought it was Scooby and Shaggy. The creeper starts chasing everyone again, but there's no music this time. It's just the same hijinks though. They start fighting in the haystack, and Scooby turns on the machine so that he can trap all of them in haystacks. Very smart of you. He unmasks the creeper, and it is
Mr. Carswell, the bank president.
the bank president. The sheriff finally shows up after not doing his job. He says that he got their message and went to the president's house and found the bank guard tied up in the basement. Apparently, since he was the last one to leave every day, he would fill up his little money bag with monies. He then came back disguised as a creeper to make it seem like they were being robbed by a ghost. The bank guard set up a camera to try to catch them and caught the president stealing money. So he went after the guard to take back the evidence that he had. And this was the paper that he was after. So they put it to the flame to develop the picture, and sure enough, it's a picture of him robbing the bank. The bank president calls them meddling kids.
Blasted meddling kids.
And with that, they're off to the malt shop. But not before returning the chick to his mother. And a bunch of eggs hatch and then print on him too. I'll give the villain a 5 out of 10. He was creepy but very slow. Literally a disgusting creep that can barely move. And I just feel like the bank president is really stupid for even letting anybody set up a camera that just snaps a picture. And also, how did he know that a picture was being taken of him? Because if he heard the little flashy flash, I feel like that's more than enough time to just break the camera. I'll give the mystery an 8 out of 10 because I enjoyed the clues because they were related to the actual crime and the motive behind everything. It wasn't just that, hey, this thing isn't a creeper because we found a wig. You know, it wasn't anything like that. It was negatives, ripped up negatives that we found. Overall, I'll give the episode a 6 out of 10. It was very mid-ish. This episode opens up on a ship on a stormy night, of course, and a frozen caveman snaps out of its rope and just goes into the water. The gang are having another beach party where Fred and Daphne are breaking it down and Scooby and Shaggy are fishing. They reel in the caveman, and Velma says that they found this caveman in the Arctic, but it was lost overboard on the way to be studied. Fred says they have to take them to Oceanland so they can put him in a cooler so it doesn't melt. At Oceanland, Professor Wayne and Engstrom thank them for rushing it here. They tell him that he would have drifted to them anyway, but their plan is to bring it back to life. They put him in a freezer, but then we see a hand turn on the heater right next to the caveman. Professor Engstrom tells Professor Wayne that he's going to the dock to do some research. Very vague of you. Professor Wayne stays in the cooler finishing his research on Arctic plankton, not knowing that the caveman is thawing out thanks to the heater. Shaggy left something at Oceanland, so they have to go all the way back to get it, and they find the door ripped off the hinges. They go inside the freezer and they find Professor Wayne's parka and the caveman's ice thawed out with no caveman in it. They find footprints and follow them to the edge of the dock. They see Professor Engstrom with some equipment, and there's a dolphin chattering while he's listening to it. Scooby sneaks up to see what he's doing, and it turns out he's listening to these dolphins talking. Scooby scares the professor back into the shack, and they're all like, damn, that was kind of suspicious. But like, all he saw was this. They open the shack and find the caveman. The caveman starts chasing them and keeps chasing them. They hide in the performing seals exhibit where the shenanigans ensue. There's this revolving background. The rest of the gang find them after they get slingshotted out by a whale. They convene outside and go over everything. Velma found a clue of an ocean chart. The current right to Ocean Lane is marked with an X on this map. Fred sends Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy out to the X marked on the map. They reach a deserted ship and they get locked in. They see that the ice machine was left turned on. Blocks of ice keep popping out and it's slowly going to start crushing them. Scooby uses one to slam open the door and they're able to escape. They try to go back to Ocean Land, but the boat they were on gets destroyed. So they paddle on a block of ice. Of course, Daphne and Freddy found nothing because they don't do anything pertaining to the mystery when they're alone. They come up with a plan that involves this, and Scooby and Shaggy are bait, and they're gonna lure the caveman under the net to be trapped. They find the caveman and get him to chase them, and Daphne is the one who fucks up the plan this time. She leans too far and falls off the ledge with the net, so it's time to run with some music. Lots of cartoon logic, which I love. The caveman eventually falls into this giant clam tank and screams for someone to help him. They pull him out and it turns out to be... Professor Wayne. Turns out they did find the caveman, but he froze the dummy in a block of ice and threw it overboard because he knew that the currents would just take it to Ocean Land. Then he melted it and made it seem like he got by that caveman. And he was after Professor Ingstrom's invention that lets you talk to fish. He says that he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for these meddling kids.
If it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
Fucking got it.
That was a clever idea you had, Shaggy.
I'll give the villain a 3 out of 10. He wasn't scary or menacing, just loved to chase. I'll give the mystery a 5 out of 10 because there were a lot of clues that related to what was going on. At no point did I think it was a fake caveman, to be honest. I thought they just melted it and it was because they cheated. We saw someone turn on the heater and then it pans up both professors, so how could it have been Professor Wayne if he was right there? Professor Ingstrom would have seen him turn it on, so it was kind of bullshit. On top of that, the little hand that we see is wearing the same exact jacket as Mr. Wayne, so they gave it away in the beginning. Yeah, I'm gonna knock this down to 3 out of 10. That's my new ranking. 3 out of 10 for the mystery. I'll give the overall episode a 3 out of 10 as well. Was not my favorite. The reason it's not a 1 out of 10 is because there were funny moments that saved it. This episode opens up in a creepy looking house. There is a headless man walking around with a candle. The gang are driving to a rock festival and Scooby and Shaggy are jamming out in the back. But of course, Fred is lost again. This man keeps taking shortcuts through spooky ass places without a map. This man is always the reason why they get stranded. They see a man coming up with a lantern. His name is Aisha Shanks and he tells them to get out of here and how to leave. He tells them to take the long way to Interstate 5 to avoid the haunted mansion and the Headless Spectre. He blows out his lantern and then just walks away. They of course decide to take the short route because they're short on gas. Fred, you have one job. Not only that, but then the van also overheats right outside the haunted mansion. He sends Scooby and Shaggy to get water from a well, and they hear moaning and a ghost comes out of the well. The rest of the gang don't believe them. Again, they've been through so much. Why not just believe them? Why would they lie? Are they dramatic sometimes? Yes. But wouldn't you just rather give them the benefit of the doubt? They do see a light coming from the mansion and they decide to ask them for a bucket for the water. They knock on the door and it just opens up for them and a candle starts floating towards them. They run into a storage room and they find a painting of Jefferson Stilwell. The head on this painting disappears and before the gang can turn around and see it, it reappears. So once again, Scooby and Shaggy are being gaslit. I'm tired of it. They hear some knocking and we see that the headless ghost is walking behind the walls through a secret passage into a box he laughs maniacally at. They open the door and find the same box, and inside is a wooden head of Mr. Jefferson. It was put there to scare them off, but that clearly doesn't work with these kids. They find some footprints that go in different directions, so they split up into the usual groups. Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby, they go into a dark room and they walk out holding the Headless Spectre's hands. They dip and the chase ensues. They get chased throughout the entire mansion and they fuck with this headless creep. Somehow they end up biking with him out the window on the phone line and falling into the well. And there's a secret tunnel in the well which they go in. With Daphne and Fred, they find an old diary. The last entry is from July 12th, 1822. Marching men in single file hide the secret. Stillwell shows the way. They hear thumping again, and when they're trying to leave, they find a trapdoor which danger-prone Daphne falls down in.
Be careful.
Oops.
They're in a fruit cellar and find the rest of the gang. Scooby and Shaggy start to eat the fruit in the jar, but it turns out to be balloons.
Balloons! Rubber balloons!
Velma then finds the helium tank, and Fred just figures it out. This is how someone made the ghost that was in the well that scared Scooby and Shaggy. Fred asks Velma to help figure out the diary entry, and then they realize that the painting of Stillwell that's pointing should show them the answer. They go to the painting and see that it's pointing to the greenhouse outside. So when Velma read the diary entry, she mentioned something about columns.
Marching men in single file. Could a column? Gosh, this old place is filled with columns.
So they send Scooby and Shaggy to the greenhouse to make sure that there's no columns in there, because if there are columns there, then that means that it's most likely there. They go and run into the Headless Ghost and run back to the fruit cellar. Using the helium tank, they fill up some balloons to escape the well, but the Headless guy copies them. The rest of the gang sees them floating, but then their balloons start popping, so down they go. They fall into the chicken coop, and the Headless Spectre's head pops out. And who is it?
I am Penrod Stillwell, great-great-great-grandson of Jefferson Stillwell.
Penrod Stillwell. So he created the story to scare off anyone who tried to steal the treasure. They're like, guy, we don't want that shit and we'll help you find it. And they hear the thumping again. They both thought it was the other party making the noise, so they go to the attic to see who it is and find a guy wearing a sheet axing the wall. They make him follow them outside and trip him into a column. The column falls on him, so we get to unmask him, and it is
Asia Shanks.
Asia Shanks, his greedy neighbor. The column they knocked down really did have the treasure, and they don't even ask for a few dollars, just directions for some pizza. Like, how are you affording all these things? Are you guys just rich? Is that why you guys don't care about anything? Okay, so I'll give the villain a 1 out of 10, and I'm referring to Aisha because it was lame. Like a bedsheet. So you saw him scaring off people by being the Headless Spectre and then somehow snuck in and like he didn't even suspect you. Like, that's so dumb. If you're axing away at his house, like what if you just axed a load-bearing beam? Then what? I don't really want to count the Headless Spectre because it's just his house, so he can just do whatever he wants. It's not like he's trespassing. He's not really doing anything wrong. I'll give the mystery an 8 out of 10. I thought it was fun and I love the main guy we thought was a threat turned out to not be doing anything wrong besides scaring people away. The clues also led to where the treasure was instead of who the Headless Spectre was, or that the villain wasn't a ghost, which sure isn't the main mystery. The main mystery is who the heck is this guy, but since it was just the owner, I like that we focus on the treasure. So overall, I'll give the episode a 6 out of 10 because it was different than other episodes, which I like sometimes, not all the time. So this episode opens up in a volcano. Look how pretty. The gang is in Hawaii, so we finally left wherever they're from, whatever Midwestern state they're from. That's fun. I like that they're expanding the settings in the second season. A little later, but still they're trying. Shaggy and Scooby are enjoying the tour led by Mr. Sims. He tells them not to go to the ancient village with the rest of the gang because it is haunted. All of a sudden there are loud noises and the sky just turns red. A witch doctor pops up and tells them that they're on forbidden ground of Mano Tiki Taya and to get the fuck out. The locals are shook and they dip. Everyone except Shaggy vanishes. At the Pineapple Parlor, Fred and Daphne are breaking out their best moves, like always. Shaggy bursts in and tells them that there were ghost drums and witch doctors and everyone vanished. They drive back and see an old man by a statue by the time they get there. And I would just like to point out that they got their van shipped to Hawaii. They have money. I don't think you guys understand how rich these kids are. And they don't even take a little cut from the mysteries they solve. Where do they get this money from? I have to know. They look for clues and they see a drum moving, but it turns out that it's just Scooby. They want to find Mr. Sims, but Shaggy is like, what if we just leave? They find a bunch of footprints that show that there was a struggle and someone got dragged away. They find a newspaper written by John Sims. Villagers are being terrorized by a ghostly legend, Mano Tiki Tia. They decide to go to the haunted village. Shaggy is so desperate for a Scooby snack, he decides to sniff out the footprints. They see an old man and start running away. And they end up by the statue, which means that they made it to the haunted village. And look, there are skulls on these spikes. A statue turns to them and they run into the witch doctor. After they run, they get separated again because of a revolving wall. We had to play Guess What Moves. Velma finds herself in the dungeon where Mr. Sims' hat is in. The witch doctor goes after her, but she's able to escape. Scooby and Shaggy get chased by the talking statue. Velma saves them both and lets them know that it's the witch doctor. Just then, he finds them. They barricade themselves in, and they do that thing where the villain is also inside and helps them barricade. I love that. I think it's so funny. The old guy is following Fred and Daphne. Fred and Daphne find oyster shells and pearls in another room. We keep getting these green wipe transitions for some reason.
This way.
Scooby finds a plane that's covered in plastic vines and it has a skeleton in it. There's a tripwire and a tape recorder attached to it. So someone rigged all this up in case someone tried to use their ship, and the gang is reunited again. They find more fresh footprints and follow them to a lake where the old man is inside of. They follow him to an underwater cavern, and it leads to a secret entrance to the village. They run into the tiki ghost again, and they're now trapped between it and a giant statue. There's no music here also. The witch doctor is just working with the statue to get them. There's a bit of shenanigans, but the way the witch doctor gets so frustrated is so funny. Scooby and Shaggy scare him off by dressing in leaves and looking like a jungle creature. So Fred uses this to try to trap him. Scooby and Shaggy get the witch doctor to chase them, and they fall on top of the statue, covering its eyes. So the statue grabs the witch doctor and they unmask him. It turns out to be
Mr. John Sims?
Mr. Sims. The statue was like a parade float operated by a henchman. They wanted to scare off the fishing villagers to poach their pearls. Mr. Sims is the only one that's like, yeah, I'm not saying anything.
Right, Mr. Sims?
I'm not talking.
The old man turned out to be a lieutenant from the Hawaiian Police Department. He tells them that the last day of their vacation will be on him, and they have their 48th luau of their vacation. I'll give the villain a 4 out of 10. It was a fun villain, but he was more goofy than anything. He just kept screaming, and his motives were a drag. Like, to be honest, just stay in the village. They wouldn't have seen you. You would have been fine. I do like his design, though. I will say that. It's also used in a lot of memes because it's just the way it looks. I do like him for that, but in the episode, not my fave. I'll give the mystery a 6 out of 10 because the clues didn't really lead anywhere, but the old guy being a lieutenant was a fun twist that they haven't done. There's also that random henchman that we never met, and the plane was interesting, but we didn't really expand on it. Was that just his getaway plan when he got caught? Because he got caught and he got arrested. So overall, I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because it was watchable, but not my favorite. Spooky painting opening straight to the werewolf. He looks kind of messed up, to be honest. We then see the gang are having a little camping trip and they're putting up Scooby's tent, and look how cute it is. They can't even enjoy some hot dogs without being harassed by that werewolf. They go investigate what the heck it was, and Scooby finds tracks. Velma notices that it's werewolf tracks because there are only 2 of them. They follow the tracks to a cemetery, and there's an open grave with an empty coffin. It belongs to Silas Long, half man, half wolf. They see more wolf tracks and follow them to an old mill. They hear more howling and decide to go inside, so Fred says it's time to split up, and Shaggy knows what time it is.
Yeah, I know, and Scooby and me'll go the other way.
The werewolf ghost follows Shaggy and Scooby and keeps popping up out of nowhere. It keeps trying to get them, but he can't. He sucks. With Velma, Fred, and Daphne, they find even more tracks that go through the wall. So Fred finds a button for a secret room, and inside they find a map of the area that they're on. There are X's, and on one is the mill. The werewolf appears and starts chasing them, and we get the chase scene.
Hey girl, you got me running. Na 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 na.
This one involved him getting sprayed with a fire hose, more green wipe transitions, and Scooby flying with trash can lids. They fall on some wool that break their fall. The rest of the gang finds them and they talk about where they've been and what they found. They found some barrels with rubber straws and they see the rail car going to the ship. Scooby and Shaggy go to see where it's going and the rest go to see where it's coming from. Inside they follow the tracks and the werewolf walks them in. Outside, Shaggy and Scooby are following the rail car and the werewolf appears and starts tossing fucking barrels at them. They do their usual shenanigans and give it a haircut.
You have a dandruff problem too, sir.
They fuck his shit up. They run into a manhole and follow the tunnel to see where it goes, and it leads them to the rest of the gang. They investigate the barrel because Shaggy says that they disappear into the barge. Shaggy takes them there and they sneak inside to see where they're going. They see the werewolf pulling a barrel out of the water and they hear sheep baying, so it's time to trap this werewolf. Shaggy and Scooby hide in the barrel and the rest of the gang are on the ship. They're gonna snatch it out with a crane. The werewolf starts to bring in the barrel and they pop out. Freddy lets the hook go, but it gets Daphne instead. Shaggy and Scooby paddle away in the barrel where the werewolf is chasing them. They head for the waterfall, but the gang catches Scooby and Shaggy with the net. The werewolf is screaming for help as he's stuck on this waterfall. They unmask him off screen and it is no one we know and no one that we could bother to name. It's just the sheep herder. The sheriff tells them that they couldn't figure out how these sheep smugglers were able to get the sheep across the river without being noticed, and this was all to sell the sheep on the black market. Everything else was just to scare away intruders, and the episode ends with Scooby wearing the werewolf mask. I'm gonna give the villain a 1 out of 10. I kind of liked how he looked, but he was useless. He fully got a haircut. What are you doing? He was just like a random we didn't even know or got to meet or anything. And how fucking dumb are you to continue doing your little plot when there are these random teenagers stalking you right now? Why would you do that? I'll give the mystery a 2 out of 10. I did not like it at all. The clues are okay, but again, just to prove that he's not a werewolf. Thank you. Overall, I'll give it a 2 out of 10 because it was a really, really boring episode. The episode opens up at a club, more specifically a dance game show, where Fred and Daphne are competing as well as Scooby and Shaggy. Scooby and Shaggy are doing a taffy twist and okay. As they're performing it, the lights go out and this glow-in-the-dark blob appears and starts harassing them. When the lights go back on stage, it's a mess. They hear someone screaming for help and even backstage is a mess. It's Johnny tied up and he tells them that he blacked out. All he remembers is the Wax Phantom. According to Johnny, they've been getting threatening letters signed from the Wax Phantom ever since they canceled a show about a wax figure maker, Grisby. He swore revenge and promised to bring his creations to life. Also, the station manager, Mr. Stevens, is here. They even find wax footprints. Fred says maybe we should call the cops, which wow, first time he's ever said that instead of saying, guys, we should solve this ourselves and then get shot at when we trespass. Johnny says no though because the station is in trouble and he doesn't want the bad publicity. Fred says that him and Daphne, of course, will check out the wax museum and the rest will go question Grisby. Johnny just gives them this man's address. At the house, this creep opens the door and they willingly go inside. They begin to question him about what happened at the station, but he already knew this because of his crystal ball. Scooby kills a ghost. Shaggy almost eats a bubble ghost stew, and Grisby is giddy and tells them that his black magic is working and he's getting his revenge. They book it to the museum to warn the others, and I'm surprised he let them go, to be honest. At the wax museum, Daphne and Fred just walk inside and the Wax Phantom is just there and locks the door after them. They start getting chased by this guy. Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby arrive shortly after and they have to figure out how to get inside. After breaking in, they get harassed by these figures and almost immediately run into the Wax Phantom. They quickly escape though and run to Daphne and Fred. They find an airline ticket to South America.
To South America?
No country in specific, just the whole continent. playmat, and they see that the wax phantom is missing in the display. Shaggy has had enough and just goes to a dinner table, and the rest of the gang just fall through this trap door, and there doesn't seem to be a way out, so they're toast. While Shaggy and Scooby are at dinner, they start to eat the food, and it turns out it's all wax. I've seen this movie before. The wax phantom is like, no shit, it's a wax museum, everything is wax. And now you're gonna be wax too, just for that. They too get trapped by the wax phantom, so R.I.P. Mr. Ink. Velma finds a secret panel with a bag full of money. Fred says the death came from this TV station. Velma stomps her foot and finds another secret passage. Through a vent, they see the wax phantom with Shaggy and Scooby tied up and getting ready to make them into wax dummies. They just roast his villain skills and tell them that it's way outdated. Who even uses conveyor belts these days? Daphne's stupid ass falls through the vent and she reverses the conveyor belt, making Scooby and Shaggy crash into them. And then we get the chase scene.
Pretty Mary Sunlight, she's alright with me.
This one includes the fake door painting that actually works, which cartoons love, which I also love. The gang finds them and they discuss how to trap it. They're gonna fight wax with wax. Velma will hide on top of the crates, Daphne will lock the door behind him, Fred will turn on the wax shower, and Scooby and Shaggy will lure him there. Shaggy's like, no, I'm not doing this shit. And they deadass run. But they run straight into the wax phantom, so they try to run back and lure him straight into the room. Inside, they lure him to the showers, and they get Scooby and Shaggy too. They unwax everyone, and it turns out the wax phantom was...
Mr. Roger Stevens?
The TV station manager. Mr. Stevens was gonna escape to South America with the money he embezzled. He knew Grisby kept making the threats, so he just used them to try to frame him, which regardless should be a crime. You can't just threaten people, especially with acts of terrorism, kind of. But I suppose it wasn't really anything crazy. It was just his silly little black magic that wasn't working. The episode ends with Scooby and Shaggy's wax dummies.
How to tell one pair of dummies from the other. Very funny.
Yeah, very funny.
I'll give the villain a 2 out of 10. He just wasn't scary and didn't need to do any of this. Just get the money and go. Once you send them to the wax museum and Grisby's house, you can just go home and leave. Maybe because he forgot his ticket. I'll give the mystery a 4 out of 10. The clues were okay, and I like that we got thrown off by Grisby a little bit, but sometimes when they're that obviously like, yeah, it was me and my black magic, sometimes it's like, okay, it's obviously not him. It's just too much. Also would like to say that when the wax phantom appeared in the beginning, Mr. Stevens was behind the gang on stage. So who the heck was that? So overall, I'll give the episode a 3 out of 10, and that sucks because this is the note that we're ending on. And that is it for season 2. So less than half of the amount of episodes from season 1. I don't know why they did that. I wish they expanded it. This would have taken me so much longer, but still, I wish they did it. So season 2 had some changes, but it kept the overall formula.
Where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now.
Every villain was some type of ghost or phantom, no matter what kind of villain it was. Daphne's voice actor was different.
Will you tell me what I'm doing in this silly costume? I think he wants that blank paper the guard gave.
She became more of the clumsy fool that ruins the plans. They started calling them meddling kids, and it was confirmed that they're in high school, so that fits. The main difference is the little chase scenes that they did. Not all of them had it, but most of them did have it, and I feel like it just made the episodes just flow so much better. I'm so tired of being like, okay, with Scooby and Shaggy, they get chased, and then we jump back to Velma, Fred, and Daphne, and they find one thing, and then it goes back to them, and they're being chased. It's just back and forth. It's just not fun. But yeah, overall, these episodes just seemed more boring. I just feel like season 1 had like really heavy hitters, and season 2, I didn't like a lot of these episodes. The ones I did like, I liked, but the ones I didn't, oh my god. Most of the bottom tier episodes are in the season. Okay, so now for my ranking, we're gonna go bottom to top. So this is my first ranking, which is like episodes that I would watch over others. But then when I was actually calculating the scores out of the 30, it's a completely different list, and I'm like appalled at what episodes beat other episodes. So I want to do this first, so you kind of just see as a whole the episodes I would rather watch versus the ranking system that I chose. So that's just my looking back, remembering which episode I had more fun watching. And now we get into calculating these little point systems. It's so tragic, guys. Top 3 are still a top 3. This show has been very near and dear to me since I was a child. My mom used to watch it when she was young, and then she put it on for me to watch when I was young. Looking back now, a few decades later, some episodes weren't that fun, but overall, it's just such a great start to a series that has expanded so much and has produced some of the best shows and movies that I've watched that I still absolutely love and will always love no matter what. This was work. I spent so much time on this. I was really scared to do this kind of video because I don't do these kind of videos on my channel, but I'm really hoping to start because I don't only want to just watch stuff with you guys, I also want to talk about them with you because your girl loves these kind of videos, and I really wanted to make my own and kind of expand my channel so it's not just reaction videos, but I do still love reaction videos, so I'm gonna keep making those. Again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't for more videos like this. I will admit my taste is a little weird, so if you appreciate the randomness of life, then I think you would appreciate my channel a lot. Again, thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!